Let's take a look at some watches. This is from just the watch. It's like the Seiko's got a new samurai.
So Seiko just released a mini version of the Samurai. Kind of. This is actually a much different watch than the original Samurai, but it certainly does carry over a lot of the same stylings. But the whole design has been refined, everything is sleeker and slimmer, and the case size has obviously been reduced down to 41.5 millimeters, which is going to make it much more manageable for people who like smaller watches or have smaller wrists.
I have to say, I love the vintage Japanese watch adverts he's got in the background here. This fellow's name is his name is Dave, and he actually does live in Japan. And big thing he loves to do is collect affordable watches and do reviews of them. So yeah, this is, and we're getting a little sneak peek here. What we have to look forward to.
And this is one that I've been really excited to check out because it's been a while since Seiko has released a new kind of affordable dive watch in this segment. It's going to be probably priced around $575 initially at retail, which is very similar to what the original Samurai was released at. Take a quick look and then we'll dive into it.
That's the one thing I've loved about the Samurai is the knurling. The knurling on the crown and also on the bezels. I love that. Oh, that loom.
Hey guys, welcome back to Just a Watch. My name's Dave. I live in Japan and I love to collect affordable watches. And today we're taking a look at a watch that comes from Seiko, which is obviously based here in Japan. So always interested to see what they've got going on. Even more interested because the Samurai has been my favorite dive watch from Seiko for a while, especially in the kind of, again, more affordable range of Seiko's Prospex divers. I think this is a little bit similar to what Seiko did with the Mini Turtle, where they had the Turtle, which was very popular, and then they came out with a smaller version that wasn't an exact copy of it. They did some changes and tweaks to the design, and they've done the same thing here with the Samurai. This time, I think really giving it a focus on upgrading and refreshing the design to give it more of a premium look. It does sort of look more kind of like a luxury style watch, still maintaining a lot of the Seiko Samurai classic looks. But this is still an
the judgment of the Oratrice Mécanique d'Analyse Cardinale.
Droid, thank you for the redeem and resort. Welcome in everyone. So here's the JDM model numbers SBDY129. Internationally, it's the SRPL 11. Retails for $575. But you do enough bargain hunting, you will be able to find it for much lower than that. Using the 4R35 automatic movement, 200 meters of water resistance, a 41.5 millimeter case, and oh dear, did a hardlex crystal rather than a sapphire. Angel Rose, hello. Addy, thank you so much for the gift sub. Rena, enjoy the tier 1 sub, courtesy of Addy there. Thank you so much, Addy. Thank you for the gift sub. How are you doing? Hello. Good to see you. Oh, we got the Wigglies in chat. Love it. Welcome in, everybody. We're looking at some new watches that have come out. Got a new one here from Seiko. It's the mini. They're calling it the Mini Samurai. That's a pretty cool looking one.
Specs diver from Seiko, which means that the specifications are going to reflect that. It's based on the 4R35 automatic movement. It features hardlex and not sapphire, which in 2024, that's getting more and more difficult to put up with, but it still has a lot of advantages and a lot of things that I really like about it.
Yeah.
I want to focus on 3 things in this review. And the first is...
That is something I am noticing about Seiko as of late. Some of the more expensive entries starting in the $500 and up range, they have been substituting sapphire for hardlex crystal. Then I don't know, call me old-fashioned, but I think around $500. I've seen plenty of other watch manufacturers creating wristwatches at that price point, and they have been able to manage a sapphire crystal in the display versus hardlex. So if smaller manufacturers can do it, I think it shouldn't be a problem for Seiko. I think this is just a bit of cost cutting and cutting some corners here. Cocktails and chill. You got the stuff to make a Grateful Dead. Watching the cup race from Daytona. Oh, lovely. Yeah, fully stocked bar, Don. Help yourself.
A comparison between this watch and the original Samurai. This watch is an evolution of the Samurai design, but it's not just a smaller Samurai. It could be considered something like a version 3 Samurai. It's like a totally new model, but I don't think that this is a replacement to the original Samurai because of the size difference here. I think Seiko will continue to manufacture both. The second thing is simply looking at this from a reviewer's perspective of, is this a good watch? Is it a solid design? Is it good build? What are its pros and cons? And finally, I want to wrap this up by talking about the price and the value of this watch, because there's been a lot of controversy regarding Seiko and their pricing structure of late. And this being what is effectively a new affordable Prospex diver for Seiko, I think it sheds a lot of insight into where Seiko is going in terms of price. But
eBay Shoujo, thank you so much for the follow. A VTuber who does video games, just chatting, and spirituality. What kind of content do you do that involves spirituality? Well, you'll just have to find out on Sundays, I guess. But you know, we're not afraid to delve into topics of spirituality and philosophy here. So yeah, but very positive things, I can tell you that. And of course, if you should like to go take a look at some of the archives that I have, there's the YouTube channel where all of my archives are at. And yeah, I've also got a podcast on Spotify, the Lord Rexworth podcast, where we talk about some of that there as well. So do feel free to give that a subscribe.
I want to start by talking about the heritage of this watch in the Samurai lineage. The Samurai is a very interesting watch in Seiko's catalog, particularly when you're talking about the more affordable Seiko dive watches, the kind of entry-level ones. The Samurai is one of Seiko's core watches in that category, but it's interesting in the fact that it doesn't have this long vintage history. You can trace the turtle all the way back to the 70s with the Captain Willard and that kind of case design, and see that it definitely shares some of the same design philosophy there. The SKX, which now lives on in Seiko's catalog in the Seiko 5 sports divers, can trace its design heritage to some of Seiko's models that they pioneered back in the late 80s and 90s. But the Samurai comes from a much more recent design, with the first version coming out in 2004, and it really wasn't until 2017 when they came out with the version 2, which released after a multi-year gap where it wasn't in production, and it finally...
That is... See, this is the one that I remember, Generation 2. I thought this one, they just got everything right on this one.
Bursted out into this mainstay of Seiko's affordable catalog. The Samurai has
the Euro style numerals, the handset, the textured dials, the indices, copious amounts of lume on there. The original had this sort of grey portion where this is red and the rest was all almost like a matted black. And of course the knurling on the crown and the bezel. Just, honestly, I thought it was magnificent. It was like if you put it side by side with an Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean, I honestly would be quite torn. But I think I might actually go with the Seiko instead. Not only for the value play, but just the... I don't know. It's got some X factor to it. I think the knurling really gives it a sort of je ne sais quoi that you can't quite put into words, but it's something special. That's the sort of thing you would find on really high-end luxury watches, and Seiko has done that with a $500 piece. That's just brilliant, I think.
always been characterized by a very angular case with sharp, aggressive hands and a unique original design that is pure Seiko. And Seiko's ability to come up with new watch designs like this that are not rehashing the design work that other bigger brands have done in the past is, in my opinion, one of the most attractive things about Seiko as a watch brand. Now, obviously, in recent years, the bulk of their watches and releases have been evolutions or reissues of watches from their own past, with the watch we're looking at today being another example of that. But these designs belong to Seiko. They're a part of Seiko's history and heritage, and they have a respect for these designs and an understanding of these designs that's far deeper than any of the other brands out there that are copying them. And I think that's something that you really see on this new Samurai. Because like I said, this is not simply taking the Samurai and changing something like the dimensions of it. This is a totally different watch. And yet it's a watch that has a clear design heritage in the Samurai line, in my opinion.
It's got some, you can tell with some of the finer details. Still a lot of sharp edges, but it almost seems like there's been, I don't know, maybe a sharpening of the sharpness? Or from a distance, it almost seems like they've sort of rounded some of the edges a bit, where they're not as sharp, or they're more, maybe more aerodynamic. So they've taken what were once sharp edges and sort of made them a bit more aerodynamic than they once were. Not that you would need them to be aerodynamic, it is a watch after all, but yeah, it just, there's been some refining going on here.
Now, the most important difference is probably still the dimensions. The original Samurai is 43.5 millimeters in diameter. This new one loses 2 millimeters, dropping it all the way down to 41.5.
Still
so
a relatively
it is a much
big
smaller,
watch.
much more wearable watch. It doesn't dominate your wrist in the same way that the...
But I mean, Generation 2 was made at a time when watches were getting bigger. Watches were getting bulkier, and people were preferring those. Now, the script is flipped on that sort of thing, and people are starting to go back to wanting, 35, 36 millimeter watches, and, even 40 and 41 millimeter watches are starting to seem a bit too big. So, yeah, it's just, they reflect the styles of the time, the preferences of the times.
Previous Samurai did. So if you have smaller wrists or simply like a smaller case size, this is definitely something to check out if you're interested in that Samurai style. However, one thing to note is the lug-to-lug on this is actually a little bit longer than the previous Samurai. The previous Samurai had a very short lug-to-lug of 48 millimeters. This is something that Seiko often does on their watches. The lug-to-lug is oftentimes much shorter than you would expect given the diameter of their cases. Here you're actually getting a 49 millimeter lug-to-lug, which is still very manageable, but that really does change up the overall shape of the case. The old Samurai was kind of this square, blocky look. This is a much longer, stretched out, sleeker look. And in fact, I think sleekness is something that really defines this new one in comparison to the previous Samurai. The case thickness has dropped from 13 millimeters down to 12 millimeters. And rather than the case being a flat case, the case has a curve to it, which is going to help it conform to your wrist better, which is going to help negate that slightly longer lug-to-lug when it comes to how it looks and feels on your wrist. Likewise, everything about this watch, from the case to the dial design to the bracelet, just feels more refined than the older Samurai. You're losing a little bit of character. I think the older Samurai was a bolder, if somewhat awkward looking watch. This one looks a little bit more normal while still also retaining a lot of the unique features that made the Samurai interesting.
It's a bit
more
conservative.
One obvious example is with the lug design, which is particularly noticeable on the non-crown side of the case. The old Samurai had these kind of interesting blocky lugs that were meant to look like they were sort of a separate or attached to the case. They weren't. It was a solid piece of metal that was just the way that the case was casted. Isn't it? But on this new Samurai, it's just a flat, continuous surface that's much sleeker than the previous one. Looking at the watch from the top, you can also see that the case is a lot more conformed to the bezel. On the larger Samurai, there's more of the case that's visible around the bezel that kind of gives it a square frame, but here you're getting a much more traditional silhouette. But on the lugs and crown, they did retain those flat angular surfaces that kind of call to mind the Samurai look.
The Mini Samurai has been to finishing school. Its older brother from Generation 2 did not, parents didn't have the money to do that. This one has been to finishing school and is ready to make their debut to society and, go off to Oxford or Cambridge for university or whatever.
Another departure or improvement, in my opinion, is the bezel. This is still just an aluminum bezel insert, so it's going to be prone to scratching and wear or patina, but it is a much higher
That's not bad,
quality
though.
and better looking bezel insert. Rather than the indexes simply being printed onto the insert, they're first engraved and then filled with white paint,
That
which
is a nice
actually
touch.
makes a very huge difference in the impression that this watch gives off. It comes
Yes.
across, I think, as a much more expensive watch than the Samurai. Visually, I think it more calls to mind luxury dive watches, whereas the original Samurai was just this big, brutish tool watch. So very different personalities here between the two.
Yes.
And I gotta say, I think that new bezel is one of my favorite parts of this watch. I think it really does look good. In that vein,
I'm not sure how I feel about the sort of blocky, square and rectangular like numerals. I think I still prefer the more kind of digital yellow style numerals of Generation 2. But those are a bit thin. You could tell even with the printing on the aluminium bezel that they would have come off a bit thin, so they would have had to like turn them into almost like a bold typeface if they were to try and etch and paint them in. I don't know. Tiny little nitpick there.
I think the action on the bezel has also been upgraded significantly. It still feels like a Seiko bezel. It has that kind of springy, clicky feel to it, but it just has a
Yes.
more refined, almost higher definition feel to the clicks.
I've got that with my SBDC 101, which is a modern take on the 62 Mars. It even has that same sound that we just heard. Very springy, very clicky, but a very good bezel. And yeah, just Seiko, they know how to make really good dive watches, and at a much more affordable price than, say, an Omega or a Rolex or anything like that.
Resistance is a little bit higher on this new bezel, but it still feels great when you're actuating it. The only problem is that the bezel is slimmer here, so it is harder to get a good grip on, which is a bit annoying. But let's move down to the dial, which is where I think you can see the biggest changes that have been made. I went with the red version of this watch because I thought it was the most interesting, and I definitely also wanted to get a version with the bracelet because I wanted to evaluate that as well. This is a very uncommon color for Seiko, so it's cool to see them branching out a bit. And while I love the vibrant red color of the bezel insert, I'm less pleased with the sort of muted color of the dial itself. It's almost kind of a dark rust color. It's not
does
my
look like
cup
rust,
of tea,
doesn't it?
but I think it works well and it offers a lot of contrast for the hands and markers. So it's cool to see this unique color from Seiko where they're also maintaining that high visibility and legibility. It's just not a color that I'm particularly drawn to myself. Now, there's been a lot of changes to the dial here from the previous Samurai. The one that I noticed right off the bat is that they moved the date from the 3 o'clock position down to a 4:30 position.
Yeah, Seiko's been doing that with a lot of their models. It might have something to do with the movement itself. I'm not sure, but yeah, this is sort of the new normal for Seiko for date only complications. Day dates, on the other hand, I think are still everything's going to be over here at the 3 o'clock position. But if it's just date functionality, then that's been moved over to 4:30.
Which I'm sure a lot of people are going to have opinions about. I tend to be okay with 4:30 dates if they're done for a good design
I mean,
purpose.
it's all right.
And the nice thing here is that by moving the date away from one of the markers, you can have all 12 of your markers on the dial. So
It's hard to win with a lot of people because a year or two ago they had put they had just, standard date functionality on their watches, like the SBDC 101, which I've got it and I'm actually holding it in my hands here. Um, but then they noticed something. I guess it was, especially the dive watches were made to certain levels of ISO standards. So you have to have certain features incorporated for it to be, considered a proper dive watch. Well, they changed those standards, I think like a year or two after they brought out like the SBDC 101, and they required that, all positions of the hours had to have some form of loom or a pip or something like that. So they ended up, and my version has this, where they put a little tiny loom pip right to the right of the date window. And I mean, that's all right. I'm not too picky about it, but other people thought it just completely messed up the symmetry of the design. And so I think going forward, they wanted to have, I think they were trying to come up with that sort of balance of, where can we put the date window and also conform to these new ISO standards so that we kind of keep most people happy. This seems to be the best compromise, is putting the date window at 4:30 and then just standard loom pip like what you have at the 9 o'clock position. Have that over at the 3 o'clock position as well, and 6. So, I mean, you're never going to be able to please everybody, but and there's some people that are just like, oh, I don't like it, it's too small, can't hardly see it. Some people are like, well, it's an odd position and just sort of, sticks out like a sore thumb, even more so. Right, whatever. Can't please everyone. So this is probably the best that they can manage, by people who get paid to day in and day out focus on design elements like this for the living. So yeah.
So it allows those hour indexes to have perfect symmetry without one of them being replaced by a date. But then you've got this sort of awkwardly unsymmetrical placement of that date at 4:30.
See,
But the
exactly.
date is fairly small. It's done with a circular, unframed cutout. And while it's not color match, it's still a dark black background to the date wheel, so it's not that noticeable. It kind of looks like Seiko was trying to go with a clean, no date look while still giving you the date complication. And I kind of appreciate that because I'm one of those people that has to have a date on a watch. So
Yeah, that's another growing trend in the watch world these days. Is people are starting to prefer no date complications on their watches. You're starting to see this come back with even the high-end brands like Rolex, where they're making submariners with no date complication. Whereas it used to be, I think it was fairly standard kit for many decades, where you got a date window and you also had a magnifying cyclops over it, with a submariner. So it's sort of evolving with the tastes of the current era that we're in.
I'll take a 4:30 date over no date any day. That said, I would have still preferred either a 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock date position. Another big change that you might not notice off the bat is that they've moved to a stainless steel rehaut instead of a printed chapter ring. Most of Seiko's affordable dive watches feature the minute printing on a chapter ring. Here, those small ticks have been moved down to the dial itself, which allows for a brushed silver chapter ring to be included. And again, this is a small thing, but I think it makes a really big visual impression in making this look more like a luxury style watch, more of a premium looking watch. It's another change that I really like here. And because Seiko is infamous for having misaligned chapter rings, they completely eliminate that possibility with this chapter ring here. So great 200 IQ move there. Hour markers have been switched over from simple bars to shark's teeth. and the handset has been completely redone. Particularly on dive watches, I love to see custom hour hands, so it's cool to see that Seiko has done something unique here. The hour hand on the previous Samurai was a very short, sharp arrowhead, whereas this one I feel like looks more like the tip of a spear. As is the trend with this watch. It's a little bit more refined, a little bit more interesting and elegant. I think the same can be said for the minute hand, which I think is a little bit more sword-like, almost katana-like in its shape. They come with a brushed finish that looks really good. Taking a little bit of a step back, this watch also retains the same knurling on the side of the bezel and on the crown that the previous Samurai had. It's a cool, unique look that
honestly, if this knurling were a woman, I would be making passionate love to this knurled woman. This is I love this. So gorgeous. This is it's the sort of thing you would find on like the switches and knobs and everything on like an old Bentley or maybe even a Rolls Royce or something. Yeah, just I love it. It's these little tiny details, but it just looks so perfect. I cannot stop gushing about this knurling on the bezel and on the crown. It just I would be touching my watch rather awkwardly and probably making people uncomfortable with how much I would be touching it if I had one of these. I was like, why are you touching your watch all the time, man? I was like, it's the knurling. It's the knurling. I love this knurling. Oh, if this knurling were a woman. Oh. Anyway.
That I really like, and it continues to work well in this design. The bracelet is, however, new, and I think they've done a great job here. The bracelet on the previous Samurai, I don't think ever quite fit with the design very well. It looked like it was something that they just sort of threw on it to give it a bracelet option. Here, the bracelet is much more angular, and I think it fits.
That's the thing with a lot of Seiko bracelets, is very often they have been afterthoughts. A lot more has been put into the actual, the watch casing itself, but the bracelets are very often an afterthought, to the point where you're almost better off just going and getting some sort of second-hand or third-party bracelet or, a strap or something like that.
It's the theme of the watch much better. It seems like it was made for this watch, and that's particularly evident in the excellent end links. These really fit the watch well, both from a design standpoint with the angles that are employed and the way that they flow from the case down to the bracelet.
Lovely.
These are solid end links. The bracelet is a solid link bracelet. It feels very sturdy and very premium, much better than the bracelets than you get on the Seiko 5 Sports models. However, the clasp is basically the same clasp that came on the previous Samurai. It's made out of stamped metal. It's not particularly premium. However, it is extremely functional, very comfortable, very well built, and it does include a dive extension. Would have been nice to see an improved clasp on here, just like it would have been nice to see sapphire, but this is still a watch from Seiko, so Hardlex it is. Now, one concern with the Hardlex crystal on this watch is that unlike the previous Samurai, rather than it being recessed under the bezel, the crystal actually rises up slightly above the bezel, which is going to make it a little bit more vulnerable to picking up nicks and scratches, especially if you happen to set the watch face down. And that right there might just be the biggest deal breaker for a lot of people, particularly when we start to talk about the cost of this watch, which looks like in the US is probably going to retail for around $525. But as with most Seiko watches, we'll probably see that price settle a bit on the gray market. But this is a...
Yeah, $525 to $575. At that price point, I would want a sapphire crystal glass. Not a Hardlex. I think that's a big miss for me. That would not. I would take a few marks off for that.
Brand new release, so it's still hard to predict exactly where it's going to wind up. All right, so I think that covers the main comparisons of this watch to the previous Samurai. Let's take a little bit of a step back and talk about how it functions just as a watch in general. From a design standpoint, not related to the original Samurai or anything, I think this is a great looking watch from Seiko. Again, I think this is an original design, something that is fresh, that doesn't call to mind other watches from other brands. And while this watch continues to fit right in Seiko's entry-level Pro Specs line in terms of specifications, still featuring the NH35 movement and again that Hardlex crystal, the refinements to the watch, especially taking into account that bezel with the engraved markings and that brushed metal chapter ring, really give this a more premium look. So if you're looking for a watch from Seiko that is both cool and competent, I think this is a really attractive offer. I'm really happy with the design of this watch. On the technical side of things, one of the most important things to keep in mind is that this is a certified dive watch, which means that it has been tested to work up to that 200 meters. This does incur a significant cost to Seiko, which is why most brands don't go through with it. But in my opinion, having that peace of mind of knowing that the watch has been tested and verified to work to its stated water resistance is better than things like helium release valves or crazy 1,000 meter water resistance ratings on watches that haven't actually been tested to those depths. Let's move on to a couple of cons, at least when it comes to the technical aspects of this watch. The first being the lume performance here is a little bit lower than I would have hoped for. I ran it through my lume scoring system, and this one came out with a score of a 7, which is below the average of 10 that I usually find on Seiko divers. You can see it here against my original Seiko Samurai, which I've had for a few years now, and when I initially scored this one, it did hit that 10 mark, but lume does degrade over time, and so after a few years, this one's dropped down to about an 8, but is still outperforming the lume on the brand new Mini Samurai. Now, a score of 7 is not a terrible score. It's a little bit below average, but as far as performance go, this should still give you all the glow that you would actually need on a dive, and it gives you completely adequate after dark performance, but is not particularly impressive. But for Seiko, it is disappointing to see lume at this level. I would have expected and hoped for it to be stronger.
Yeah, Seiko's famous for having the best lume in the business. Just full stop. They just for some reason they have that magic formula of just the brightest and the longest lasting lume, and you get into sunlight and then all of a sudden you go into a dark area and it's just going to keep on lasting. And yeah, that's just the one thing that they've really gotten right over the years. So that is rather disappointing to hear that they're starting to, it seems like maybe they're cutting corners even with that. I don't know. That's a bit sad, really.
The more worrisome aspect about this watch is that there is a significant amount of dust under the crystal, which is just unacceptable here. And this is particularly true because this is the JDM made in Japan version. So you would have hoped that if Seiko was doing things in country, they would have done a better job at quality control. And
here's the other thing, chat. JDM watches, they don't fuck around. Even with the entry-level pieces, they are quite anal retentive about a lot of details, and so to see that there's this much dust underneath the crystal, when just taking one of those little rubber bulbs that you can blow air to blow the dust off. Just a few more squeezes of that, and that would have done the job. That's troubling.
And I've had a lot of Seiko watches. Most of them have not had quality control issues. Still, Seiko has become known for having issues like this. And so when you see things like this, it really does stick out and confirm that reputation that Seiko has unfortunately been getting in recent years. Okay, let's move on to the third and final thing I wanted to talk about, which is the cost of this watch. Based on the components of this watch, the Hardlex crystal and that 4R35 movement inside of it, this does put it in Seiko's entry-level range as far as dive watches go. Their more premium and mid-level dive watches will have sapphire crystals. You'll get things like 6R movements. So the components definitely put this in the same category as the original Seiko and as the Seiko Turtle. But you are seeing an increase in price over those previous models, which are still available. Here in Japan, the retail price is listed at 83,600 yen. I pre-ordered mine on Amazon at a discount, and as far as prices in yen go, that's pretty high compared to Seiko's other watches, but I think that's also due in part because the value of the yen is very low right now. Now, Seiko USA hasn't released a retail price, at least I'm not seeing it posted on their website yet, but I am seeing it listed at exquisite timepieces for $575, and this is compared to the retail price on the original Samurai being $525. So they're
Yeah, I don't know. I might be tempted to go with a Gen 2 Samurai instead. Especially if you get that savings. You get the sapphire crystal rather than hardlex. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit bigger, but I don't know. I think this seems like the better deal. I don't know, it's just me. Even though everything else on this is good, but yeah, little QC issues and the hardlex crystal. I'm sorry, I just can't get over that. At that price point, I want sapphire. That's ridiculous that they're not offering that.
pricing it at $50 higher retail price. But if you look at the price of the full-size Samurai on Amazon, that one's running at right around $400. So that's around $125 below the retail price. And this is something that always happens with Seiko's watches after a few years. They release them at their retail prices and then they tend to drop when they get onto other resellers.
Oh,
as
yes.
always, you're going to pay a bit of an early adopter tax. If you want to buy this watch now, it is going to...
Yeah, that's the other thing with Seiko watches. If you find one that you like, wait about 6 months to a year, and you'll probably find it on sale. You might even find it on with a big sale happening. Big discounts applied for like a Black Friday or Christmas sale. That was the case with my my SBDC 101 that I got. Normally, that was about, I don't know, an $800 to $1,000 watch, and I had a big Christmas bonus that year, so I think I spent all of like 750 on that one. Which, yeah, it's a lot of money for a watch still, but that's quite the bargain. And got it from I think I may have gotten it from a grey market dealer, so mine may actually be a JDM watch. I don't quite recall, but yeah, it was it was a fantastic deal.
come in at that $575 in the US, but wait a year or so and we might see this dropping down closer to $400 or $450. But no matter which way you slice it, this is being priced at above the previous Samurai. As noted, there are a few minor upgrades. The bezel's a little bit nicer with the engraving there. It's got that metal rehaut, but I don't think that these upgrades are enough to justify that price increase.
Yeah, no.
As far as components and materials go, this is very similar to the original Samurai, and it's still being priced above that. But it's not being priced that much more above it, and I think because of the differences in this watch, particularly the size and the refinements, it's still going to be an attractive option for a lot of people. If you're a fan of Seiko, people are going to criticize this price because it does not have a sapphire crystal. They're going to complain about the lack of milled clasp, and they'll point to micro brands and AliExpress brands that offer these features at a much lower price, which are all valid complaints. However, I do think that Seiko offers things that these other brands don't. The most important being the design here. It doesn't matter how well spec'd a watch is. If it's an ugly watch, you're not going to wear it. And a lot of people are not interested in watches that are direct copies of luxury watches that are knockoffs, or what a lot of people euphemistically refer to as homages. And for me, I'm willing to pay a little bit higher price to get a good original design. On the technical side of things, you also have to keep in mind that this is a professionally rated dive.
See, I disagree in part on the whole thing about homages. When you learn about the little tricks that companies like Rolex play on the public, with their sort of artificial scarcity, and the whole just BS and unethical games that authorized dealers tend to play with prospective customers. yeah, I've seen that stuff. I've seen the undercover videos, and yeah, honestly, it pisses me off to the point where I I was actually discussing this in VC with some people over at the Castle Rexworth Discord, and it it honestly makes you want to go out and buy one of those homage watches just to spite them. And that's kind of what I've done with a couple of recent purchases of watches. Um, and what I intend to do was some other um, future purchases of homage watches, because I can get all the things that I want for a much lower price. I'm just not getting that particular brand name on the dial, and I'm okay with that. Uh, so yeah, it's almost the things that some of these luxury brands do. They start to make their own case for homages, clones, and for just straight up piracy at that rate, because they're not treating the public very well. And I think the idea of, almost encouraging that behavior with authorized dealers of, well, we can put you on a waiting list, but if you were to buy a few other items, we might be able to bump your name up on the list a bit. Yeah, that sort of pay to play type thing is like, no, it's a fucking watch, man. At the end of the day, it's just a watch. And I'm either going to walk out of your boutique with the watch that I want, or you're not going to get my business. You're going to do this whole artificial scarcity thing where it's like, well, we don't have anything here. Or all we have is display models. Well, send me the display model. Well, we can't do that. There's no mechanism in it, and it's just there strictly for display purposes. It's like, okay, then, I mean, what the hell are you doing here at this point? You're just there to collect money and try to entice me to spend more money than I may have, and blow it on a whole bunch of other frivolous items and extra inventory that you were, stupid enough to stock too many pieces of, all to, and at the end of the day, it's just trying to get more money out of you. I'm like, no, fuck you. I'll go get an homage from China someplace, and I won't think twice about it. And I might just do it just to spite you, because I, yeah, I personally believe what Rolex and companies like them are doing is just entirely unethical and just dishonest and not a good way to conduct themselves as a business.
Dive watch, which is something that most of those other lower cost watches don't offer. And I think that diver's rating does make this a much more reliable dive watch. It does give you a lot more peace of mind when it comes to the water resistance here. You can make the argument that a watch that hasn't been through water resistance testing that the ISO certification process gives you isn't a true dive watch, it's just a dive style watch. And so to me, this dive rating is an important part of the watch, and it does factor into my evaluation of its cost. So where I'm personally landing with this release from Seiko, I think at the full retail price, it's an acceptable price to pay, except for those quality control issues. There should definitely not be dust under the glass at this price, but as long as you get a clean watch, I think it's worth that initial price. If the price does drop down to around $450 in the next year or two, I think it will be a very good price for this watch. But possibly what I'm most looking forward to is them doing a kind of King Mini Samurai version where they throw in a sapphire crystal and maybe even an engraved ceramic bezel. Those King versions, which are upgraded versions of Seiko's entry-level dive watches, I think are one of the coolest offerings in the affordable market. You're getting iconic dive watches from Seiko with upgraded specifications, usually at a price that's well under $1,000. So here's hoping that this watch will be a success that will be followed up by other color variants and some of those upgraded editions as well in the future.
Yeah, the King Samurai are absolutely brilliant watches. And I think the first versions of the King Samurai that they did, um, they they went beyond just the date complication and did a day date complication. So it would show you the date of the month and also the day of the week. And very often, depending on where in the world you buy them, they're bilingual. So, if you got like a JDM model, you could get one that was bilingual in both English and Japanese. And I love that. That always looks so beautiful, I think.
Future. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. Drop me a comment down below in the comments. Let me know what you think of this watch from Seiko. Is the new size and the more refined design enough to tempt you to pay that slightly higher price that Seiko is asking for the specifications compared to micro brands and a lot of the AliExpress brands? I think that it is, but I also think there's probably going to be a lot of controversy around that point down below. If you're interested in getting a watch themed t-shirt like this one, you can check out on my website at justthewatch.com. That's going to wrap up for today. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Yeah, that one, that was a good video. That was some good content. Yeah. Let's see, do we have any more? Oh, here's a good example of homage watches. This came out just a day ago. Here's Jody at Just One More Watch. Yeah, and he's really big on the Chinese brand San Martin, which I've actually ordered a San Martin watch, and it should be here in a couple of weeks. It's actually an homage to a Pepsi dial GMT from Rolex and Tudor. I'm looking forward to trying that one on, getting it sized and wearing it about. A Pepsi GMT. That's something I've had my eye on for a long time. It's actually one of my Grail watches. I had thought, well, maybe I'll save up my money and get a Tudor, but I don't know. Just after everything I've seen with their sister company Rolex and everything else, I'm just like, nah. You know what? We're gonna save our money and get everything we do want, nothing we don't, and also have a easily serviceable movement. Because that's the thing. These Rolex movements and even a lot of the Metas movements from Tudor, they are in-house movements, which means very often you have to send them off for servicing, and the servicing itself can cost as much as it would take to just buy a new watch. Sometimes $1,000, even more. Whereas the San Martins, a lot of them use Seiko NH35 movements. There are other ones out there that will use Citizen Miyota movements. Those are easily serviceable at any watch repair shop. Any jeweler can just take those and make the necessary repairs and servicing to them quite easily. They're just such a workhorse movement. Yeah. I think I'd rather have... I'll take the San Martin. I don't feel I'm compromised in any way. If anything, I'm probably getting something better. Anyways, let's watch the video.
Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch.
Hello,
and welcome today to a top
Jody.
5 San Martin video. If you've got a feeling of deja vu, it's fully justified. I last made a new top 5 San Martin video in June this year, and here we are only 2 months later with another 5 new releases. They are nothing if not prolific.
Keeping
in their
busy, aren't
output.
you, Doctor?
And oddly enough, there's another sale on at AliExpress at the moment. So if you're keen on picking up one of these watches, now is not a bad time to do so. You saw the pop-up? This video is sponsored by the San Martin official store on AliExpress. I will therefore leave links to all 5 watches in the order that I show them in the description of the video. I'll do little mini reviews of each one with pros, but also with cons. And it's the usual mix of originals, lookalikes, and original lookalikes, if you see what I mean. And if you don't see what I mean, you soon will. Let's get on with it. And let's start with one of 2 quite similar watches on the list today, and a new version of what I think is San Martin's best original design. It's their SN0116 series, and they have just released 2 of what they're calling distressed versions. One is meant to look like a well-worn Pepsi dial, and
Oh, that looks pretty. I like that. As far as original designs go, that is not bad. It's very conservative. It plays it safe, but honestly, that's not bad. I could be convinced to get one of those. I could quite possibly be convinced.
and the other a decidedly sun-bleached black dial.
Ah, okay. So they have the well, thanks. Welcome in. Thank you for the lurks. Now, so earlier you had, okay, you got the Pepsi dial here. They call it that because of the red and the blue, reminiscent of a can of Pepsi.
Worn Pepsi dial, and the other a decidedly
This one right here is what's frequently referred to as a root beer dial because of the brown and the black, sort of evoking memories of sarsaparilla or root beer. Which, you know, if you ever had root beer, that's what it looks like. Especially if you can find somebody who can do homemade root beer. Oh, that's a treat. Especially to do a root beer float. Ho, ho, ho. Anyways, enough about root beer. Let's get on with it.
sun-bleached black dial. Both feature Fotina discoloration on the hands, the indices, the date wheel, and the minute track around the outer edge of the dial as well. Both are available during the sale for a very reasonable $279 US.
That's really not bad. For a GMT watch that is also an original design, yeah, Seiko NH34 movement, 100 meters of water resistance, a sapphire crystal on the glass, not that Hardlex crystal nonsense. And you get some pretty cool Fotina retro design motifs and everything. I mean, that's really not bad. That's getting on the level of something like I mean, yeah, you could probably buy a smartwatch for that much, but I mean, smartwatches they got the planned obsolescence going on, don't they? So they're going to be one of those things that is just going to go dead on you after a while because the manufacturer won't support it anymore, or you know the battery's going to run dead on it and it won't hold a charge anymore. Well, this in theory passes on to the next generation. This will last you for years, decades even. A little bit of servicing, maybe once every 10 years or something like that. And not only that, it's a GMT. GMT watches up to the recent years, those have almost been exclusively reserved as luxury pieces. You had a GMT movement on your watch, you were dealing with a strictly luxury timepiece. But in recent years, Seiko has come out with the NH34, which can have a GMT complication added to it. Citizen has come out with a Miyota movement that is also capable of GMT functionality. Not only that, but it also has the jumping hour hand functionality. So it's a true traveler's GMT, not the office GMT like the NH34. And they're able to do these, and you are finding more GMT watches under $1,000. And in this case, you're seeing an NH34 Seiko movement with a GMT functionality for well under $500, actually under $300 US. for something that was once reserved as an exclusively luxury type timepiece that only the wealthy could afford to have, this is true democratization of luxury and of fashion accessories. Which, let's be real, that's what a watch is at the end of the day. It's not just a thing to tell the time; it's also to look good too. Um, but just at that price, that is that's huge. That people don't realize how big that is. That we're able to get GMT watches under 500, even under $300. That's absolutely fantastic.
They are meant to mimic the look of those famous tropical dial Rolexes from the 50s, 60s and 70s. If you're unfamiliar with these, they started out as regular Rolexes, but because of flaws in the paint that was used and the passage of time, some of them have taken on delicious chocolatey golden hues, as you can see here. They
Yes.
are highly sought after by collectors and will cost you a lot more than $279 US. Let's put it that way. SN0116 is a cracking watch. It has a slim and stylish
absolutely.
skin diver style case with appropriately drilled lugs. The beads of rice bracelet used is also period correct. The on the
I do rather like that beads of rice bracelet. That is really nice. It's not quite mesh, but it's also not a carbon copy of the Jubilee band from Rolex. Um, yeah, it's just it's different. It's another one of those things. It's got a bit of an X factor to it, and I like that.
fly adjustable clasp is not. It's a nicely wearable 39mm in diameter. Thickness
that's
is
just
only
right.
12.5, which is pretty good considering the movement.
Yeah, normally with GMT complications added in, it's going to add some thickness to the watches. And you see this especially with Rolex and Tudors, that they can, especially like a Black Bay GMT from Tudor. I've tried one of those on before, and it's a chunky boy. It's a very chunky boy, and yeah, but this is that's amazing the way they've been able to cut that thickness down. Normally, we're talking like watches that can be about 15 millimeters thick, maybe more. It starts to feel like a pretty thick hunk of metal on your wrist, and it's brilliant how they've been able to keep everything as thin a profile as possible. 12.5 millimeters. That is respectable. That is still your average sort of dive watch thickness, your sort of skin diver level of thickness. Anything thicker, and you're starting to get into more deep sea and saturation diving.
Lug to lug of 46.5, lug width of 20 won't be a disappointment to anyone either. The beads of rice does taper down to 16 and back up to 18 at the clasp. As sized for me and my 7-inch wrist, it weighs 125 grams. Water resistance is 100 meters, crystal is vintage style boxed dome sapphire, and the movement is a
Brilliant.
Seiko NH34 GMT 4-hander. I stress again just how good San Martin watches are, just how well made they are, how perfectly they're finished, how nice they feel in hand. You really have to spend over twice this much before you start getting a product that's actually any better made. Moans and niggles.
I don't think that it's one of those things where you'd best get in and take advantage of the arbitrage while you still can, chat, because I don't know if San Martin is going to remain this cheap forever. A few years from now, we may be dealing with watches. San Martin is a Chinese company. All of the watches are made in China, but we may be dealing in future years with watches that once were about $250, $300 US. Now they've gone up to about $400, $500. Something in that price range. I don't know if it's going to stay that way forever. Just factoring in things like inflation and currency fluctuations. And not only that, but the popularity. San Martin, I think, have already jumped up in price a bit. Whereas other companies like Pagani Design, you can still pick up a watch for about $100. I actually got a Tudor Ranger homage from Pagani Design, and that was about what I paid. I think I paid by 120 or something like that. A little extra for shipping. But yeah, it will maybe it was taxes. But yeah, that used to be the price point for San Martin watches just a few years ago, I believe. But they have really upped their game. But it's one of those things where increase in quality subsequently increases in price. Codesart, welcome in. Thank you for the hydrate. And thank you for the stretch. Ah.
About this one, well, I've never been convinced that the hand proportions are quite right. I've always felt that
Really?
the hour and minute hand could do with a bit more meat and the second hand a bit less meat. And forced or fake patina, no
maybe.
matter how nicely and consistently it is done, is not going to appeal to everyone. Don't worry though, if you like the watch but not the colour version, you're not short of options. I'll leave links to a few non-tropical ones as well. Moving on from
That's
an
good
original
that they
design to
offer
a
non-tropical.
decidedly borrowed design, there is a lot of Tudor here, but Tudor haven't quite made a watch like this, not yet anyway. This one is the SN0128. It's a new release of their Black Bay lookalike.
Interesting. A sort of dusty pink dial. Yeah, that is not part of the Tudor lineup. This is, this is most decidedly modeled after the Black Bay 58. I think this rotating bezel is more Rolex-y than anything else. Pleasure, mate. Ah, thank you. Yeah. I don't know. They've only recently started introducing Jubilee bracelets to their watches, but definitely not any sort of pink dial in the lineup with Tudor, and I don't believe with Rolex either. So this is actually there's a bit of a fresh take here. That said, I don't know if some people like pink. Some men like to wear certain pink items, and hey, if that's you, that's perfectly fine. Not really my cup of tea. I had a pink T-shirt from the Gap that I wore, Don Johnson style, with a white linen blazer and linen trousers, sort of replicating a Miami Vice look. That was many years ago. That is the extent of pink that I'm willing to wear. I don't know if I'd want to wear a pink wristwatch. Although, maybe you've got a lady in your life. Maybe they are a bit more of the sporting type, or maybe they want something that is a bit more of a sports type watch, which would go well with sportswear for whenever they go to exercise, or even something that they can wear with something that's I guess maybe like a New England prep style, or country club prep style clothes, and depending on the wrist size, might actually be perfect for them. Who knows?
But with a soft pink dial. During the sale, you can get one of these for $207.
Then again, maybe not. 40 millimeters. That is fairly large for a woman's wrist. That's going to be a big chunk of metal on the wrist. I don't know if most ladies are going to go for that. Unless of course you're dating a muscle mummy, or you yourself are a muscle mummy, then you might like this. But that is a fairly precise sliver of a demographic. So yeah, muscle mummies, if you're out there, if you're watching, consider San Martin, the SN0128. It's pink, so to help you to feel girly, and it also looks like a Tudor, which is an expensive watch, so you'll also feel rich. But as you can see here, you won't have to spend a fortune in order to have it. So yeah.
$17 and a few cents. Tudor released a pink dial Black Bay chronograph at
Ah,
Watches
that's
and
right.
Wonders this
Forgot
year,
about that.
but as yet they haven't released a pink dialed three-hander.
I'm sorry, we have to go back. David Beckham with a pink Tudor chronograph. Nah. Nah, that's not it, mate. That's not it. Probably would have been better off going with the Panda dial. Panda dial being the being white instead of pink, with the two black subdials. Yeah, that would have been better. I still want to get a Panda dial chronograph. I saw a lovely Seiko one. It's solar powered and it's quartz. And if I catch it on sale, I can actually get it for under 500. Might still get it. I don't know. Depends on whether or not I opt instead for maybe one of these homages to a Daytona or a Tudor Black Bay Chrono. I don't know. I have to think about that.
Watches and Wonders this year, but as yet they haven't released a pink dialed three-hander. Perhaps they will homage San Martin at some point. I've looked at this model a couple of times now with different dial and bezel combinations. It has the traditional Tudor slab-sided case, an unguarded crown and a coin-edged ceramic bezel. It also has an excellent Jubilee bracelet, a style that is only just beginning to filter through the Tudor range. And it's an interesting size. It's a 40-20, so 40mm in diameter, 20mm between the lugs, thickness of 12.5, and a lug tip to lug tip of 49, making it a little bit more substantial on wrist than the 016 we just looked at. The Jubilee is great though. It tapers from 20 down to 16, and it's the same clasp as before. In fact, it
Action Bastard, hello, hello. Good to see you. How are you?
is the same clasp on 4 out of 5 of the watches today. Weight is 140 grams, double dome sapphire, 200 meters of water resistance this time, and it's a three-hander, so it's an NH35. Now that does mean a ghost date position, but I'm not going to complain in a watch this nicely made.
That'd be good. Got dinner waiting to cool down, but I go, oh, what's for dinner? What's for dinner? Yeah, by the way, chat, with some of these, like the NH35, they're designed to have a date complication with them. Manufacturers can go in and do a bit of tinkering with the movement to get rid of that ghost date clicking bit, but a lot of times they'll just save time and money and just throw it in there, and you'll just have this ghost position that's supposed to be for a date. But I mean, yeah, it's just there's no date window or anything like that here. So yeah.
Costing less than $220. Now I did say the size was interesting because this one rather splits the difference between the 41mm Tudor Black Bay range and the 39mm Tudor Black Bay 58 range, so they're probably aiming for somewhere in the middle of the bell curve. I'm not sure the pink dial though will hit the middle of said bell curve. It is a bit of a muted shade of pink, much like the one Tudor has used, but perhaps if San Martin had wanted to add a bit more of themselves into the design, they could have chosen something a bit brighter. That's the first moan with this one then. I also note it has a printed logo rather than an applied logo. That's a bit of a 50-50 in San Martin's catalogue.
That's alright.
I always prefer their applied logo.
This is definitely a watch that's for a specific outfit. Yes, agreed. I was saying earlier, it might be, it's a bit big for, it seems more fitting for a woman, but it's a bit big for a woman because it's 40mm, whereas ladies' watches tend to be somewhere like 32 to 35mm. So, yeah, I suppose if you are dating or married to a very feminine girly girl type of muscle mummy, or if you happen to be a very feminine girly girl type of muscle mummy yourself, then this is the perfect watch for you, and it's only about $200. So yeah, there you have it. if you happen to fit into those tiny little slivers of demographics, then save up $200 and buy this watch. If it was a watch meant for women, first image that comes to mind is a tomboy in overalls. Yeah, or maybe kind of preppy tomboy girl or something like that. I don't know. Watches like these they tend to go well. Uh, sort of divers type watches for women that are sort of the tomboy preppy girl. That seems to fit that sort of that type. That seems to fit them the best. But then again, they might be the ones that opt for something a bit more of a go anywhere, do anything type watch, which would be more along the lines of a Tudor Ranger or a Rolex Explorer, which gets rid of the rotating diver's bezel and just has a very simple dial like this, and just I don't know.
In San Martin's catalogue, personally, I always prefer their applied logo. But if you like the case shape and you want a little bit of colour, this one is definitely an option for you. Talking of colour, remember I mentioned the concept of an original look-alike? Let me show you the next watch on the list at number 3. It's the SN0118. Now again, this is a San Martin original design that I've looked at before in other colours.
A watermelon
they
watch.
Have clearly been looking at the success of a certain British micro brand when they released this decidedly watermelon looking colour version. Now San Martin are not the only AliExpress brand to have made the same observation, but at least this one only borrows the colour scheme rather than the whole design. 195 and change gets you one of these during the sale, around
that's really not bad.
if you want a mesh bracelet instead of the excellent FKN
Alternate.
Tropic.
Yes, a
And
Christmas
if you're not
themed
into
watch.
watermelon,
Yes.
don't worry, you're not short of other, admittedly, similarly vibrant colour options. This
Oh
one
my.
is slightly larger, 40.5mm in diameter, 12.7mm thick, lug to lug of
That is
47,
flashy.
again 20 between the lugs. Now, weight on the Tropic is 85 grams.
This is a beautifully made watch. You can tell from the macro shots. That is a bit flashy, though. I don't know if I am far too conservative in my choice of accessories and colors and just everything in my color palette. I could not see myself ever wearing this watch. Maybe someone can. Maybe it's their flash piece. Maybe they like to do a bit of peacocking or something like that. I don't know if beautiful watch, but the color scheme, that one's not for me. This one's gonna have to be a pass for me.
It's a really nicely integrated piece of double domed sapphire, 200 meters of water resistance, and you're not
I
going to
love
believe
these
the
specs,
movement.
though.
Actually, you probably are. It's the Seiko NH35 again. And let me assure you, you're not going to be short of wrist presence with this one, especially if you opt for the mesh.
Oh, it's got presence,
the dark
all
green
right.
Tropic that I have here is colour matched to the bezel rather than the brighter chapter ring, so it does kind of tone down the look overall just a little bit. Well, as far as you can tone down a watermelon coloured watch anyway. Cons with this one, well, it's a watermelon coloured watch, and they've chosen to colour match the date complication and then print the date in black. It's really not easy to read as a consequence of both of those decisions. You can see that quite clearly here.
Yeah, this is that. That takes some doing, matching the date wheel to the rest of the dial. As we saw with the Seiko earlier, Seiko couldn't be bothered to do that. San Martin does. It's really saying something good about them. But yeah, the black on pink, kind of hard to. Yeah, that's hard to read. They probably should have opted for white numerals instead. Sort of like what you get with the numbers on the bezel here. Yeah, I can see his point.
Here with the high wrist shot. If that is a factor for you, perhaps go for one of the other more legible colour versions instead.
Thought it might have been a soccer team watch, and only one team in England has those colours, and it's Blackburn. That's possible. I mean, if Blackburn's interested in a sponsorship or some sort of advertising deal, they should reach out to the people at San Martin. I know San Martin does custom watches, so maybe they can do a Blackburn limited edition of this particular watch. I will say that I am still looking at the idea of a merch offer on my part of a Lord Rexworth wristwatch. I had considered a much higher priced and much more limited edition type watch from Christopher Ward, but we are talking about probably limited to 25 pieces, and they would have easily have been anywhere from $750 to $1,000 US. I know that most of my audience doesn't exactly have $750 to $1,000 to kick around like that. So, alternatively, I'm very closely and very seriously looking at San Martin, and maybe I will probably be making some inquiries here soon to see what they can do, because they've got some just fantastic original designs, and the homages are just c'est magnifique. So we'll see. To be continued on that.
Next up at number 4, it's a bit of a bitsa. It's a new colour version of their SN0053. Now,
the Ultra Edition needs to come with some 007 features. Maybe something like a built-in flashlight or a grappling hook that comes out of the crown or something like that. Yeah, we'll have to get the boffins on that one. All the boffins from Q Branch. This is interesting. Yeah, taking some Rolex nods, and then I'm not sure where this handset is coming from, but it does look lovely.
Perhaps you can tell from the nomenclature this is an older model, but they've just launched 2 new versions, one with a Sunray blue dial with silver hands, and one with a Sunray brown dial with gold hands.
They
are both priced the same though, that price being $225 US during the current sale.
Bad.
Now I call it a bitsa because there's a lot of Tudor in here. It uses a very similar case to the SN0128 that was at number 2 on this list, but this time it features a fixed bezel rather than a dive style bezel. It's a really nice bezel, by the way. Have a look at it under my super macro lens. The machine.
Oh, that is. Oh, I like that brushing. That is good. Not a bad price at all. No, San Martin. You get a lot of watch for the money, and I mean, if you don't mind something that is an homage and something that's made in China, you can find these on AliExpress for really, really good price. That's where all of these are on sale, is on the AliExpress website and app.
Is superb, and you've got a little high polished edge, a high polished transition. The majority of it is brushed, and then there's another tiny little lip where the box dome sapphire nestles. Because there's no dive bezel though, you do get a larger dial and a bigger handset, meaning this one is arguably easier to read than the 0128, plus you get a date complication at the 3. But you also get a set of broad arrow hands, normally more associated with Omega than with Tudor, hence my use of the term.
Yeah, Omega and both classic and modern Nevada Grenchen watches tend to have this type of handset, and it is quite easy to read. It is very, very easy to read.
Bitsa. 40mm in diameter, 12.5mm thick, 48 lug to lug, so it's not exactly the same case. 20mm between the lugs, 130 grams as sized for me, 100 meters of water resistance, box dome sapphire, and the ubiquitous Seiko in the back.
Yeah, this is sort of your go anywhere, do anything type of watch. I don't know if I would recommend it with the brown dial and gold handset, but the blue with the silver handset. that is definitely a go anywhere, do anything type of watch. You know, it could possibly be a one and done sort of thing, if that's what you're aiming for. But uh, to build a collection, this is, I mean, this isn't bad. This really is not bad.
Water resistance, box dome sapphire, and the ubiquitous Seiko in the back. Every one of these watches has a sterile case back, by the way, this one requiring either a specialist Rolex/Tudor removal tool or one of those much cheaper soft rubber balls. I guess that helps keeps costs.
Balls.
I guess that helps keeps costs. Whew.
You'll get it, Jody. You've got this. We believe in you. We believe in you, sir.
I guess that helps keep costs. Helps keep costs. I guess that helps keeps costs.
Oh, no.
I guess that makes them cheaper to manufacture, but it also makes the watch.
There we go. He did it. He made it through the line. Yay. Good work, Jody. We knew you could do it. He'll get it one day. He got it. Yeah. Honestly, would get the blue if I had to pick one of the two. Yeah, same. I like that blue with the silver handset. That's really smart looking. Hey, you can it's one of those types that you can dress it up or you can dress it down. So it'll go well on more of a casual day. You can wear it with a suit if you wanted to, or you can do sort of a business casual attire. But I mean, if it's like shorts and a t-shirt type of day for you, you can still get away with wearing that. It's fine.
Watches feel a little bit generic, a little bit factory, if you know what I mean. Personally, I think that this style of fixed bezel watch looks chunky and purposeful on wrist, although it does always look like something is missing because something rather is missing. But not everybody likes dive watches, and this one certainly offers a lot of the practicality of a dive watch, but without the bezel and with a slightly bigger dial and handset instead of it. And finally, last but by no means least, it's the second SN0116 based watch on today's list. Again, the fruity theme continues here as well though. This particular version is advertised as being grapes purple with other options including avocado green and simply orange. There's also a rainbow coloured bezel.
Oh my. That orange. Oh gosh. That will... Oh, that's an eye catcher, all right. I mean, I'm warming up a bit to the lime green. That's not bad, but the purple and the orange, that's that's those are yeah, those are interesting ones to be sure. Not for me, but I mean, if you want a flashy color, in something that's maybe a bit more vintage style, there's your watch, whoever you are, and not a bad price either. So if you fall in love with it and then fall out of love with it fairly quickly, well, you're not going to be out very much, are you?
Version with a lime green second hand if you want to.
Oh, and then there's the rainbow one. There's the rainbow, the multicolored bezel. That's, perfect if you can't decide what color watch you want. You want all of the colors of the rainbow. Or, maybe you want something to wear for Pride Month, I guess. I don't know. But, oh, my retinas. Yeah, those things. God, that orange one was like a bacon. Oof.
Wear your pride on your wrist. The price on these is $230 regardless of colour version. I think that makes it the best value watch on today's list and frankly one of the best watches you can buy at its price point. Not only do we have a beautifully machined case, excellent bracelet with screw length.
Okay, this is the purple dial one, obviously. But note the green second hand. I think it would be safe to call this more like a Mardi Gras. This is more of a Mardi Gras theme than anything else, because these are sort of the colors that you would associate with Mardi Gras. best value subjective definition says what? I mean, in terms of price point, I mean, you can't really complain. But yeah, those color choices, oof. I would, yeah, I would go with something else. They do. I mean, this is part of a model family, but they have much more conservative colored ones. I think they have like a standard black and a blue dial. Um, yeah, and they may have some sort of photina'd, maybe like a brown or whatever, and maybe something like a white dialed variant. But yeah, this is more of the sort of new series of very colorful variations.
Not only do we have a beautifully machined case, excellent bracelet with screw links on the fly adjustable clasp, but you also get an attractive dial with applied indices, applied logo, and a colour matched date wheel. But this one also features a sapphire bezel insert. I don't think anyone is doing better specs than this or better build than this for less money than this.
That he's right. The diver's bezel that rotates here, this is also made out of in part out of sapphire crystal. Yeah, at this price point, you do not see anyone else doing this. Sapphire glass, sapphire bezel. Typically, you have to spend 1,000, 2,000 or more to get all of that. Yeah, other watchmakers love to charge out the arse for that sort of thing. And San Martin's giving it to you for about $200 to $250 on a sale. That just goes to show you how much other watches are being marked up by other companies. So, gaddish color choices aside, this is actually quite good value for money. Oh, and also the matching color date wheel. Like we saw with the Seiko couldn't be bothered to match the date wheel to the dial on that sort of rusty red mini samurai. So they just did a black date wheel with white numerals. San Martin actually put in the effort, matched the color as best they could, and gave us white numerals here in the 6 o'clock position. That's not something that a lot of watchmakers at this price point could be bothered to do, but San Martin did it. Again, just goes to show you what just the markup and also what they really could do if they wanted to.
The dimensions are almost identical therefore to the Tropical GMT, 39, 12.3 because of a slightly slimmer piece of glass, 46.5, 20, 130, 100, double domed, and can we make it 5 out of 5? Yes we can, it's a Seiko NH35. Now, I have been sent a lot of San Martins over the years, which is why I can state with confidence that this 116 is their standout model, and with an ever-expanding range of colour versions in both 3 and 4-hand configurations, you're bound to find one that suits your personal taste, from the more conservative black versions to the less conservative, shall we say, purple grape versions like this one. But my concerns about hand proportions apply to this as with all of the other 116s. Perhaps even more so here because you have an arrowhead and a big counterbalance on the second hand, and the sterile caseback just screams China Direct. But at least it's comfortable, and at $230 this watch blows anything from Seiko, Citizen or Orient right out of the water, I promise you. So there you have it, another 5 new or...
Because I also own an Orient. I believe it's a Mark II Ray. Orient is owned by the same company that owns Seiko. And it is, for the longest time, you got a lot for your money with an Orient. And they are still good entry-level watches, I believe. But as of recent years, they have been, I think, probably cutting some corners, a la same as Seiko. prices have had to go up, and so the value is just not quite there like they used to be. So it's, yeah, I don't know. I would definitely still keep Orient as a contender at that price point, but what we see from San Martin, that's, I don't know. I'd probably lean more toward the San Martin than anything else.
Updated San Martins for you to choose from to add to the plethora of models that were already in their ever-expanding catalogue. Perhaps there was nothing too radical here today, but some welcome new colour versions of some of their best models, including one of the most convincing and cohesive Fotina treatments that I've seen on anything so far. Happy shopping if you are going to pick up one of these or anything else from the current sale. I'm off to have a cup of tea and get ready for the next 5 new San Martins that surely are only a few months away. Well done for making it all the way to the end of the video. If you're a fan of the brand, and you clearly are, why not check out another couple of San Martin only videos. Thanks for watching this one. I'll see you again in the next one.
Alright, that gets a like. I'm already subscribed. That's a good channel. Just one more watch. Chap's name is Jody. I think it was either earlier this year or sometime last year. Graduated from university with, I think he had a doctorate of philosophy or something like that. So yeah, he's Dr. Jody. Everybody give it up for Dr. Jody. Showing us the best that San Martin has to offer there with just one more watch. Let's see. What else do we have? Oh, Watch Crunch. That's a good one. Oh, and there's another one from Adrian Barker we'll check out. Yeah, but let's watch Watch Crunch.
Once in a while, I come across a watch, whether it's in person or online, and I think, wow, what a great looking piece. I forgot about that one. These watches, they stand out because they never became widely popular.
Look at that Grand Seiko. That is gorgeous. Oh, that's the one that's got the special magnetic resistance to it. Love that.
And you'd only see them on the wrists of serious.
I mean, you could do worse. See previous orange and other Geddish watches.
Enthusiasts. Well, today I've gathered 3 of my favorites for this video. They all make for great everyday watches, and they're all from the past decade. I've got a Tudor, a Oris, and a Grand Seiko. Now, what's great about these hidden gems is that you can find them for a pretty good price. These are all below $3,000. And while making this video, I actually thought of a 4th, an Omega, that also fits this bill. So I'll tack that one on at the end. If you want to learn more about enthusiast watches, go where the enthusiasts hang out. Our very own completely free to use Watch Crunch app. It's a discussion platform built from the ground up for watch nerds. I'm really excited about this Oris. Not that I haven't owned my fair share of Diver 65s, but never this heritage model, which was discontinued in 2021. The newer ones have the applied markers, but what I've realized is that there's just something magical about this original dial design. Yes, this dial replicates the original 1965 watch, which is just so much fun. When I saw someone post this particular colorway on Watch Crunch, I just couldn't get it out of my head, so I finally had to buy it. It's got this pastel blue border with a gray center. The hour numerals are framed with lume and printed in this super funky like 60s font. I've always loved the proportions of the Diver 65, 40 millimeters wide, 48 lug to lug, and 13 thick. It's got wrist presence without being overwhelming. The crystal is a highly domed sapphire.
That's not bad.
So if someone tells you that they can't mill sapphire into a high dome shape, tell them to talk to Oris, because they seem to have figured this out.
Yeah.
And because much of the watch's height is attributable to that crystal, it actually wears thinner than stated. The vintage-inspired design extends beyond the dial to this entire package. The black aluminum bezel is thin and clicky and fitting for this 100-meter skin diver. It's got a screw-down crown, so no worries about taking this into the water. And even this bracelet is appropriate to the period with faux rivets and a strong taper from 20 millimeters to 14.
Don't know how I
So
feel
it's
about
really
the
like a
faux rivets,
cohesive
though.
package, feeling like you're wearing a vintage watch with modern finishing. I guess the longer I collect watches, the more I gravitate towards like interesting variants in particular models.
I think that's kind of the secret sauce to what is really selling these days, and I think is probably a consistent key to success is a modern take on vintage design, or even vintage designs with modern manufacturing and engineering techniques. There's just obviously something so timeless about the design, but a watch made 50 years ago is not as robust as a watch that is made today. So I think that's kind of the key to what really works, and is, I think, quite true of like very evergreen sort of watches that they'll stand the test of time, as it were. No pun intended.
But I think I just have a soft spot for Oris watches from the era before they
They're
went
good
completely
watches.
in-house with their movements.
They're really good
back
watches.
a few years ago, I felt like if you wanted sort of a mid-tier Swiss timepiece, something say between a Hamilton and a Tudor, Oris was like the sweet spot. You're getting a Swiss diver with a Sellita movement from one of the only independent watch brands to survive the quartz crisis.
We'll get to
Next
that
on the
in just
list
moment.
is a Grand Seiko, and not just any Grand Seiko, because you can usually not get a Grand Seiko for $3,000. But this is a rare model they never really promoted. Let me present to you the SBGX 341. So let's address the elephant in the room first. It is a quartz. That's why the price is kept reasonable. But realize that Seiko's 9F quartz is heads and shoulders above the rest.
Oh,
First,
it's
they
the
grow
best.
their own crystals
Best in the
in-house. These movements, they're thermal-regulated and boast an accuracy of
I mean, let's just back up the tape here for a moment and just watch how the Grand Seiko quartz ticks. It hits each one of these marks perfectly. And you might notice some strange sort of movement. That's because if you were to slow this down, you would probably see it ticking twice to get over to each one of these markers. It's just it's so precise, and they're so well made. They're the best in the world. But I mean, then again, Seiko, they were the ones who, they pretty much invented the quartz watch. They came out with the very first quartz wristwatch with the original Astron, and they've just been making really good watches ever since. It might seem hard to believe, but quartz watches were actually high-end luxury timepieces back in the day. And then all of a sudden they figured out how to manufacture these to mass produce them and do so quite cheaply, to the point where now a quartz wristwatch is considered fairly pedestrian. That's one thing that drives me nuts about watches with markers like that and hands that don't match up to the markers. Yes, that's the thing with a Grand Seiko, it will hit that mark every single time. And it's not going to bounce or wobble or stutter on the way. It's going to hit the mark perfectly, with precision, every time. Hello, Jedi. Welcome in, welcome in.
But realize that Seiko's 9F quartz is heads and shoulders above the rest. First, they grow their own crystals in-house. These movements, they're thermoregulated
amazing in
and
and of
boast an
itself.
accuracy of plus minus 10 seconds per year. Yeah, per year.
Yeah, plus or minus 10 seconds per year. It only loses or gains 10 seconds per year. I'm sorry, grow crystals? Yes. Actually, a lot of watchmaker, well, a lot of the quartz crystals that are used in quartz wristwatches, or any clock for that matter, you'd probably find that they were grown in a laboratory somewhere. Seiko happens to have their own laboratory for growing quartz crystals, and it's actually quite easy to do that. What's hard is to get a high quality crystal like what you would find in a Grand Seiko. Oh, okay, that makes sense because I'm thinking grows and grow like a plant. I mean, somewhat similar in a way, yes and no. But yeah, it is quite possible to grow those in a lab. I mean, a lot of gemstones, for example, can be grown in a lab now. I mean, we can grow diamonds in a lab now too. So it's quite possible to collapse the price of diamonds by releasing enough that are lab grown into the market. But they don't, because there's still like one or two companies that have kind of a monopoly on worldwide distribution. Ah, yes, let me go outside and water my quartz plant. Actually, that'd be pretty cool.
The movement in this particular model also lives behind an iron shield, giving it 40,000 amp per meter of magnetic resistance.
That's
what does that
awesome.
mean? I did a quick calculation. It equates to 500 Gauss, or half a mil Gauss, enough to protect from everyday magnetism like those found in speakers, household electronics. And I think Grand Seiko makes great dress watches.
They really do.
I don't really gravitate towards their big divers, GMTs, the really sportiest models.
They do make some fantastic divers. I have worn that particular Spring Drive divers watch before. I got a chance to try it on. Love it. Absolutely love it. But yeah, no, the smaller quartz watches. I actually have a Grand Seiko quartz that I believe is about 36 millimeters, so much more traditional sizing. And I actually got a Grand Seiko black alligator leather strap. I had to have it imported because they don't offer it in the American shops. So a Japanese grey market dealer was able to source the strap for me, and that is actually what I ended up wearing to my graduation from business school. So when I got my MBA, I was wearing my Grand Seiko, and yeah, it's just a magnificent watch. It's the one watch that I wear on special occasions. Most of the time, if I'm wearing a suit, I'm probably going to be wearing my Grand Seiko. I think there's even a few times when I've worn like a tuxedo or formal wear, and I've worn this Grand Seiko. It's my go-to dress watch. And it is just, there's really not much to it. It's stainless steel casing, a white dial with these little polished hour pips that have been polished so much that when the light hits it, it almost creates a sort of prismatic rainbow effect. The hands are also polished to a mirror sheen. They do what's known as Zuratsu polishing. It's the same type of polishing technique for katanas and samurai swords. And it is just, again, it's one of those watches that it cost me a fortune back in the day. I think I paid close to $2,000 for one of these. But it is just, I'm looking at it right now, and it is yeah, I mean, it's one of those watches that is my crown jewel and is not going to ever leave my collection. Whenever I wear a watch, I always have it on the bottom of my wrist like the military. Yeah, I mean, you can always do that, yeah. At that point, it's an investment. I mean, really, it is. It's one of those. If I were to try and sell it, I would never get what I paid for it. Probably a fraction of that much. But it's just it's the sentimental value and where this watch has been, that I can't part with it. It's the same with my Seiko Astron. It's a GPS solar powered watch. Another one of those that cost me a pretty penny back in the day, but it is one of those watches that has been with me around the world. It has traveled with me from one side of this planet to another, and it's sort of become a trusted friend and companion that I mean the GPS functionality really does work to automatically set the time. I took off from an airport in the United States and then landed at Narita Airport in Tokyo, pulled out the crown, set the time and the date, and within a few minutes it latched onto GPS signals there and was able to figure out, you're in Tokyo. Okay, setting the time for you, sir. And yeah, that was it. It's done. Off we go. And yeah, it's another one of my. I may just have to do a hand cam stream sometime, showing off the watches in my collection, just to give you all an idea of what it is that I have on my wrist throughout the week or on special occasions. I may have to do that. I may have to do the hand cam stream at that point. So yeah, I've been grabbing all of my watches off of my off of my watch box here, and now I've got them all in front. I've got a lot of them in front of me on my desk. I've got 4 of them up here on my desk, staring back at me, and yeah, it's nice. It's nice. Oh, just thought of a feature for that Ultra Edition watch, a custom AI companion. going to have your own personal Jarvis for Friday. Yes. Yes, I know, Jedi. You were mentioning wanting another handcam stream out of me fairly soon. Well, you may yet get another one here if I'm to show off my watch collection, which it's not. I mean, I don't have any Rolexes. I don't have any Patek Philippe's or A. Lange & Zungers or anything like that. I have a Seiko. I've got a couple of Seikos. I've got a Grand Seiko. I've got an Orient. I've got a couple of Casio watches, which I mean, they're super cheap, but they are just excellent. Go anywhere, do anything type watches. I do have an AE 1200 Royale that I very much would like to get a new stainless steel case for it. From SKX Mods. Oh, and lest I forget, I've also got my Christopher Ward Sealander GMT. So yeah, and that was the one for me that just sort of kicked off this GMT kick for watches that I insist on having GMT complications to them, because I mean, especially now as a VTuber and having a girlfriend who lives in another country, I've got people all over the world, and I'm going to be I've got friends and I've got business interests and everything else all around the world, and I've got to have an easy way of keeping track of the time. And so GMT watches are a very elegant way of doing that. But also, the Casio AE1200 and the A500W, fantastic world timer, digital type watches. I am the sort that is, I can't believe this is considered old school now, or that I'm even calling it old school. But I'm not one that I can never really see myself owning a smartwatch. However, I will gladly wear a Casio digital watch that has world time functionality. Like with my A500W here, I just press a button on the side. I'm able to look at 4 different time zones and just cycle through them as needed. And that's really all I need. I don't need anything that tracks my blood pressure or heart rate or, step counters or anything like that. More than anything, I need to be able to, at a glance, tell the time in multiple time zones. And in that sense, the most useful watch I have in my collection is my Casio A500 and also my Casio AE1200. Both of which have that same sort of functionality where with the press of a button, I can cycle through 4 different time zones. Like right now, I've got New York, I've got London, I've got Tokyo, and I've also got Seoul. And it's got a little tiny LCD world map that also points out which time zone is being tracked at the moment. Lol, the watches are... Oh, exactly. Sir, it's 8:30 a.m. and you have yet to have your coffee. Shall I alert someone? Almost sounds like it should be a Jeeves alarm clock. Ah, yes, sir. Good morning. I'm certain you shall awaken to face the day with all the vim, vigor, optimism, and excitement that we have come to expect. Good heavens, sir. I saw a pig flying past the window. The rising and the shining cannot be postponed forever, sir. But in this intractable world, one can be excused for the shining portion being withheld. Lol, the watchers are staring back at you like, when are you going to wed us next? Believe me, I cycle through them almost daily, but I have been wearing my Pagani Design one the most as of late, just because that's my most recent acquisition. And I mean, it is a very smart-looking watch. I wanted an Explorer-style watch for some time now, and I finally got one. Lamau, I need to get a watch that lets me see my heart rate so I can see how high my heart rate gets when playing Rocket League. Well, I mean, depending on what type of phone you have, Jedi, if you got an iPhone, just get an Apple Watch. Or if you have an Android phone, particularly a Samsung Galaxy phone, they'll work with they've got I think it's called a Samsung Galaxy Wear or something like that. I had one for a while. I didn't like it. Not just that, but to alert you to breathe and take a step back for the moment. Yeah, definitely. Anyways, we have derailed quite a bit, and I've now got all of my watches on the desk here. Let's get on with the video, shall we?
So Grand Seiko calls this particular case design tough sports. And I would say this is like as sporty as I'd personally go in a Grand Seiko. It's a great everyday watch for that reason. Kind of splits the difference. The case has a muscular stance with wide...
Yeah, Grand Seiko's not really known for their sports watches. They're more meant for elegance, something a bit more formal. Apple watches aren't expensive. They are. Samsung Galaxy Wear, I mean, for as much as you would pay for a Samsung smartwatch, you can actually get what we just saw, one of those San Martins. And I would say go with the San Martin because it's going to last longer. Again, that's the thing with smartwatches, is that there's planned obsolescence with every single one of them. They all have a rechargeable battery. What do we know about rechargeable batteries? They all eventually lose their charge and they won't hold a charge. And another thing, once you get to a certain OS update with your phone or with even the watch itself, eventually it's going to get to a point, knowing these companies, they are going to brick the bloody thing. And they're going to make you buy another one. And so I say, fuck all of that noise and get yourself a proper quartz or mechanical watch. If you want something closely resembling a smartwatch, consider a Casio digital watch. They've got some that have some of the functionalities that you're looking for, that have blood pressure monitors. Some of them have compasses built in. And then you've got ones like mine that have everything from a backlight to alarms, to a stopwatch, to a timer, and the ability to track multiple time zones. Frankly, I think that's about all that one needs with a so-called smartwatch. The thing scaring me away from a smartwatch is like, what are you going to do if an EMP goes off? You are much more likely to be struck by lightning than anything like that happening. Yep, I mean, there's a few apps I can't use now because it's no longer compatible with my phone. See, exactly, Action. I don't like that sort of planned obsolescence that they've got going on. It's just another way of trying to milk money out of the working classes, and it's more grist for the mill, or sauce for the goose of the bourgeoisie, and frankly, they've got enough money. They can make do with what they have. And as for me, once again, you'll never see me buying a smartwatch. I'll stick with my Casio digital watches. Thank you very much.
Protruding lugs made up of large intersecting flat surfaces. These facets are Zaratsu polished on top while the case remains brushed on the sides. The flat bezel also has a vertical brushing and sits flush with a flat sapphire crystal. The presentation is rugged, but with plenty of small details and intricacies that communicate that it's still a luxury watch. The dial is a creamy white with gunmetal markers and hands, creating a strong contrast and high legibility.
That is
colorful
gorgeous.
touches come in the way of orange second hand, as well as the same orange appearing in 2 quarter sections of the chapter ring.
And the GS is raised. I love that. That is beautiful.
The loom is really, really strong on this watch, and the Easter.
Oh, that's neat. Look at that. So you got blue loom on these, but on 12, 3, 6, and 9, and also on the hands, you get a green loom. I like that. It sort of reminds me of the old Marathon watches. Marathon does the same with those, and Marathon watches are the ones that they issue to U.S. servicemen. Oh wow, that is pretty. It is really. I'm quite fond of blue loom, but I do like it when they sort of mix it up like that.
Easter eggs is that it uses LumiBright in both blue and green. Now, I usually don't have nice things to say about Grand Seiko bracelets, but this one actually works. See, on the dressier models, this bracelet just doesn't taper enough from 20 to 18. But because this is a sportier design, the mild taper is perfectly suiting this watch. It still doesn't have any micro adjustments or on-the-fly adjustments, which at this price is a little bit inexcusable, but it also helps to keep the clasp nice and small of a square. Half links are included. I was able to get a nice fit on my 6.5-inch wrist, but this watch makes for a confident daily wearer. Sporty enough to be casual.
He's got a good choice in microphone there too. I think that's an RE320, which is the prosumer version of the RE20 Electro Voice. I used to use those in my radio days all the time. This is a good microphone, by the way. Those of you who are looking to get into streaming, or maybe you are a streamer or a VTuber already and you're looking to upgrade your microphone, and maybe you're looking at something like a Shure SM7B, like what I'm talking to you in right now, that is a good choice. Good alternative, the Electro Voice RE320. highly recommend it. Lovely, lovely sound that it's able to reproduce. Function greater than form, exactly action.
Casual, not to worry about banging it around, but still it's a Grand Seiko, so the details feel finely crafted. Number 3 on my list of hidden treasures is this Tudor North Flag. Now, when this watch was released in 2015, I think it confused a lot of people, me included. It didn't sell that well. See, it wasn't some vintage-inspired diver, which was really hot at the time. It was a completely novel design with the integrated bracelet long before that craze came about. In retrospect, with a 2024 lens, we can see that the North Flag not only should have been a hit, but it's also just a significant watch for Tudor. It was the first to use their Kinesi MT series movement.
That looks like a watch my father has. Yeah, I mean, if it's something that dates back to, say, like the 1970s, that was the time of the integrated bracelet. So that, yeah.
Which over time has proven itself to be quite reliable of a workhorse. This is a cost movements watch for Tudor. It was the first to use their Kinesi MT series movements, which over time has proven itself to be quite reliable of a workhorse. This is a COSC certified 4 Hz movement with a stout 70 hours of power. The design of the North Flag dial also channels Tudor's Ranger model, which they have reintroduced in earnest more recently. I presume North Flag is referring to the journey taken by the British North Greenland expedition in the 50s when they were equipped with 30 Tudor Oyster Prince watches.
Yeah, this is the Tudor Oyster Prince was what went to the North Pole. That it went to the North Pole and came back still in good nick.
The style, it's got a matte black finish with a 12 and 6 applied Arabic numerals. There's a date at the 3 and a power reserve at the 9. So not symmetric, but the dial has a pleasing balance with elements at the 4 corners. Now, some might ask, why have a power indicator in an automatic watch? I don't know, it's fun. I mean, when you wind it, you can see the little thing top up.
Yeah, and you'll see this a lot with like the Grand Seiko spring drives. A lot of their models still have that power meter. You'll also see it with some solar-powered quartz watches too. Like my Seiko Astron has got a power meter on one of the subdials and lets me know how much or how little power is left, and whether or not it needs to be exposed to sunlight to charge up.
Also gives it a cool little splash of yellow, plus you got the same yellow in the second hand. The case of the North Flag is not subtle, and this might rub some people the wrong way. It's a chunky 40 mil by just over 13,
Yeah,
but it wears
brutish.
big. In fact, this is a great illustration that numbers don't tell the whole story. This watch has identical dimensions to that Oris Diver 65 we just talked about, but because the lug-to-lug is 50 and the thickness is due to the slab-sided case and not contributed to by the domed crystal, the North Flag wears much bigger on the wrist. It's not unbearable, but definitely more blocky than graceful. The angular design, though, carries into the integrated bracelet. There is a screw-down crown and 100 meters water resistance, so again, great everyday watch. I borrowed this one from a friend. As you can see, he's not taking it easy, and it's taken a few licks, and it's still ticking. So I was gonna finish the video here, but I thought of a fourth watch that fits this sort of cult classic category, and that would be the Omega Railmaster. I'm not talking about the trilogy one, I'm talking about the denim dial. Man, they took some risks with that watch. I especially like the one shipped on the denim NATO strap. How cool is that? Anyways, guys, which one of these watches would you rock on the daily? And let me know if there are other hidden gems that I forgot about. Take care. See you in the next one.
Okay, these are good choices. I like these. I rather like these. Let's see. Oh, yes. Adrian Barker from Bark and Jack. He's got some good recommendations on quartz watches. Let's give it a go.
A lot of people in the watch world turn their noses up at quartz watches, and there's even some publications that just refuse to cover quartz watches. A lot of people, myself included, who talk about the introduction of quartz watches in the 70s, they call it the quartz crisis.
That one with the illuminated hands got my eye on that one. Yeah.
But when we look at it as the evolution of a timekeeping device, it should really be called the quartz revolution. I do understand
really
when people
was.
say that quartz watches lack emotion, or that they're not romantic, or they're soulless, but you have to look at the right sort of thing. And it's really interesting.
Oh, that is gorgeous. This is CWC. CWC stands for Cabot Watch Company. For probably a good 15, 20 years, Chad, these were standard issue for the British Armed Forces. I believe the Army, the British Army, the Royal Navy. I think even the RAF got their own versions of special issue watches from CWC, and you can still buy them today, and buy them in both quartz, and I think they've got a few mechanical, but they're primarily known for their quartz movements, just because of the accuracy.
Because we're seeing this transition, this impact of an industry happening today in the car industry. So you've got the combustion engine, the hybrid, and now we've got the takeover of the electric vehicle. People are making exactly the same comments around electric vehicles as they are around quartz watches, saying that electric vehicles lack soul, they're not as fun, they're not passionate. Of course, you could look at a bad electric vehicle and just claim all electric vehicles are bad. But if you go to a purpose-made electric vehicle, they're just kick ass. And that's exactly the same thing with quartz watches. Yes, there are some cheap, terrible quartz movements, but there's also some amazing ones. And that's what
all valid points. I mean, you're not going to catch me dead in a Tesla, even though they were one of the first really kind of popularized electric car. I think that they're just cheap, plasticky, unfantasticky little toys for the road, and the people that buy them are just people that, a lot of them just have zero taste in cars, and some of them have zero good taste. The Rimac, however, or maybe like an electric Porsche, okay, now we're talking. Imagine a car you can't get in winter because the handles froze. Yeah. Yeah, they don't still got a problem doing well in the winter time. Yeah.
What I want to highlight today, I want to go through the history of quartz, kind of point out some major milestones, talk about how it came around, but then show you 7 absolutely kick-ass quartz watches. So everything started back in 1927 when Bell Labs over in the US created the first quartz clock. Inside it had a block of quartz crystal stimulated by electricity, and they managed to get this thing to be accurate to 4 seconds a year. The challenge...
Yeah, and some of the photographs that he's showing here, these are some of the original quartz clocks. I think the original that they came up with, it was about the size of one of those massive supercomputers, one of those big server racks that you see in server rooms. It was quite big and quite is just a massive bit of kit. And but yeah, that's what it took back in the day.
Was this thing was the size of a suitcase, and it was a million miles away from being able to shrink that technology down to the size of a watch. It wasn't until 1957 when, again, in the US, Hamilton Watch Company created the Hamilton 500, which was the first electric powered watch, but it still had a mechanical escapement. In 1960, the Swiss got involved. Bulova launched the Accutron, which was the first electric watch, but rather than having a mechanical escapement, it had a tuning fork escapement. Still not quartz. However, at this point, quartz prototypes had been widely shared, and so it was quite obvious this was the direction that people were going to go in. At this point, it was well established that Switzerland was the home and global center of watchmaking, and they had just gone into massive crisis mode because they'd seen how accurate these quartz watches were and how much cheaper they were to make. As a way of Switzerland trying to maintain their global dominance around watchmaking, 20 of the most prestigious and most recognized watch brands, watchmakers, came.
Good Lord. A lot of these are big names. Most of them got gobbled up by Swatch Group. But at one point, all of these were independent brands. Zenith, Patek Philippe, Rolex, Eterna, Tissot, Movado, Jaeger-LeCoultre, Doxa, Rado, Ulysse Nardin, IWC, Certina, Oris, Longines, Girard-Perregaux, Bulova, Omega, Universal Genève, Enica, and Piaget. That is a lot of companies, yes. And a lot of these. I know Tissot, I think Rado, I know Longines for a fact, I think also Oris, I know Omega, Certina. They all got gobbled up by Swatch Group. I think Ulysse Nardin as well. IWC, I don't know about them. JLC, I don't know. They might be LVMH. Piaget, I don't know about them. Bulova got purchased by Citizen. And so now they share a lot of parts with the Citizen Group. Most of their automatic watches, the mechanical watches, now are powered by Miyota movements, and even their quartz movements, I think, are Miyota quartz. They've got a few specialty ones that may be modified Miyotas, but yeah, they are a brand underneath the Citizen Group. I don't know about Movado. Patek, I think, is still independent. I know Rolex is still independent. Zenith, I'm not sure about. And I have no idea about Enica, Universal, or Eterna. But yeah, all of these banding together to try and do something about quartz.
Came together to create a conglomerate, a collaboration called CEH. Some of these brands included Rolex, Patek, Omega, Longines, and IWC. The idea was surely all of these brains from these massive, powerful watchmakers could come up with something absolutely incredible. These guys were the first to launch a quartz watch in 1967, and it was powered by a beta 1 movement. It was a battery-powered movement and had a quartz oscillator as the timekeeping element. However, that wasn't commercially available, and they were actually beaten by Seiko in 1969, who launched the first commercially available quartz watch called the Seiko Astron. It was
Yeah, I've actually seen this at the Seiko Museum in Tokyo, one of the original quartz Astrons. It's a lovely watch. I mean, it's gorgeous. But yeah, when this was first introduced to the world, it was one of the most expensive watches in the world. I can't remember how much they wanted for it originally, but yeah, back in the day, this was considered a luxury item. This was something that you bought if you were just rich and had so much fuck you money that you could just buy one of these and not think twice about it.
advertised as being 100 times more accurate than a mechanical watch with an accuracy of 5 seconds a month. Absolutely.
That's brilliant. I mean, and by even today's standards, that's still good, but they've only gotten even better. As we've just heard from in some of these earlier videos, Grand Seikos, for example, accurate to within 10 seconds per year. 10 seconds per year. That is incredible accuracy. And that's one of the main points of having a watch is you want something that's accurate, tells the time accurately. And you cannot get that with a mechanical watch.
Absolutely wild compared to a mechanical watch. In 1970, CE8 hit back with the Beta 21 movement, and this is a very famous movement. This is a highly collectible movement, but also a bit tricky because it's near impossible to find replacement batteries for this thing, and that was one of the reasons this movement was a bit of a flop. It just ran out of battery power so quickly. And also, there was a bit of the collaboration just fell apart because all of these little brands, they wanted their own in-house movements. I assume a lot of them didn't like the idea that we're all sharing.
Yeah, there's I've heard it said that it's like, oh, you can tell a Rolex is fake if it has a ticking hand rather than a sweeping hand. That is not true. There are some quartz-powered Rolexes out there. There are a couple of, I think this one was a quartz Datejust. And then they've also got a series of watches that were called the Oyster Quartz. And yes, they do tick. So a broad statement of if a Rolex ticks, it's a fake Rolex, that is not accurate.
Sharing the same technology. For example, Rolex in the background were developing their own quartz movement with the help of René Lecoux, the grandson of the co-founder of Jaeger LeCoultre. They came out with the Rome movement in 1977, which went on to power the Oyster Quartz, kind of proving the
Oh, both of these look absolutely gorgeous. Honestly, if I had to, this would probably be one of the vintage Rolexes, or even both of them, that I would strongly consider owning. Would be an Oyster Quartz. I really would. I would love that. Honestly, I'd go with the one of the. Yeah, I think it's the Roman numerals, isn't it? It's the Roman numerals. I like the Roman numerals on Rolexes. It works so well. I don't know if I'd go for an all gold Oyster Quartz. I think I would prefer something like this gold and silver motif on a watch like this, but I've always liked the day date functionality on the presidential Rolexes. But yes, I do love this dial. This is a lovely, lovely dial. My great-grandfather had one that looked like the one on the left, so I'm a little bit biased. No, that's understandable. But yeah, no, even all the older Rolexes that I've looked at, I see these Roman numeral dials, and I'm just like, that to me is classic Rolex right there. That's one of those like, touch of class, and it's always been that design motif of a watch, and especially of a Rolex. It's like, that's the Rolex that you buy to tell yourself and tell the whole world, I have made it in life.
All around, if your Rolex ticks, then it's fake. It's not quite true. A lot of these watches around this time used very similar technology, and they all pretty much had the same specification of being accurate to 5 seconds a month. Far superior to mechanical watches even today. However, this is when Citizen came in with their hyper-accurate watch in 1979, which was accurate to 3 seconds a year. But this was a limited edition. At this point, the quartz world was being dominated by Seiko and Citizen. Their technology.
I love these old adverts. But let's just go back and look at that again. Now there's a good alternative to a Rolex. Day-date functionality, the Roman numerals on the dial, a sort of integrated bracelet approach. Though the bracelet looks a bit thin. Funny thing is that advert could be used now and it still look good. I know, right?
A limited edition.
Let's go back
At this point, the quartz world was being dominated by Seiko and Citizen.
Yeah. No, these sorts of adverts would still look good today. I honestly, it makes me want to become the next Don Draper just to get advertising back to looking this good again. From conquering new peaks to sailing windy seas, there's a rugged companion for your adventurous life. The Seiko Quartz Sports 100, designed for today's men of action by the world leader in quartz technology. Sailing, swimming, or mountain climbing, these watches are rugged enough to meet their active lifestyles, handsome enough to reflect their good taste, accurate enough to meet their high standards. Every Seiko Quartz Sports 100 is water-tested to 100 meters and so efficiently designed that it can run 5 years on a single ordinary battery. All are shock-resistant and feature day-date calendars, hard-leck scratch-protected crystal, stainless steel cases, and bracelets. Seiko Quartz. Someday, all watches will be made this way. I love that. Kind of wish that all watches were made this way, because, I mean, that's bloody good. Whether you're climbing the tallest mountains or the echelons of corporate empires, trust your time with insert watch company here. These digital numbers here, this looks good. I like that. I especially like this, the Citizen Quartz Light, because you got the backlight on it. And then you got the alarm as well. You can set an alarm for it. It'll beep at you when it's time to wake up. And I don't know how much £125 was back in the 70s or 80s versus today's money, but I mean, even in today's money, that's not a bad price. I think they have. I don't think Citizens have quite kept up with inflation. I think they're actually cheaper today than they would be back then, but that's all right. That just means more savings for us, and you get a very smart looking watch. It's not a smart watch, but it is a very smart looking watch.
Technology was just far superior.
Let's see what we have here. Oh, these look good. I like these. Now you can have day-date convenience combined with superb quartz accuracy in a watch of slim elegance. Introducing the Seiko Ultra-Thin Day-Date Quartz. Seiko maintains its world leadership in quartz by continually developing innovative and advanced precision timepieces. The renowned Seiko superiority in microtechnology means that Seiko can incorporate many advanced features, including Seiko's famous day-date calendar, within a case of outstanding slimness. This means that Seiko can bring you a watch of impressive dependability and accuracy that also offers incomparable elegance. In brief, Seiko Ultra-Thin Day-Date Quartz brings you all you could hope to find in a quartz watch. All the accuracy, all the Seiko quality and dependability, all the good looks. Seiko Quartz. Someday, all watches will be made this way. I like that square number there. I like that. Let's see. The Now and Future Watch. The Digi-Ana Quartz by Citizen. And I can't quite read that because it's a bit too blurry. That's also a pretty cool looking watch. A chronograph dual time. Oh yeah. Yeah, you got a manual clock face here, and then you got a digital clock. So you keep track of 2 time zones just like that.
Far more advanced than anyone else in the world.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Going too fast, Adrian.
And Citizen, their technology was just far superior, far more advanced.
Look at that. I love that. This looks like, yeah, Japanese advert for Seiko quartz watches. Not many watches tell you the time. The Citizen Multi-Alarm 2 does. Chirp, beep, beep, beep. The Citizen Quartz Multi-Alarm 2 has just signaled 11 minutes past 1. It's the only watch in the world which can be programmed to tell the time. Chirps signal the hours, a double bip counts 10-minute units, and a beep signals the minutes. Not only is the Multi-Alarm 2 unique because it actually tells the time, but it also incorporates several other special features. 2 24-hour alarms remind the wearer of important moments. Alarm 1 chirps for 1 minute, and Alarm 2, which can be used for a second alarm, or as a backup for Alarm 1, gives a minute of beeps. Each alarm and any other signal can be shut off by pressing any control on the watch. An automatic hour chime gives an every hour on the hour time signal. A countdown timer signals elapsed time from 11 hours 59 minutes 59 seconds to 1 second. And a calendar watch displays seconds, minutes, hours, AM, PM, day, date, month, and year. the Citizen Quartz Multi-Alarm 2, an amazing timepiece, £99.50 including VAT. The Citizen Quartz Multi-Alarm 2. Certainly unique, that's for sure. Hell yeah.
Than anyone else in the world, and this was when ETA, the movement manufacturer ETA, had an idea. If Seiko and Citizen are dominating the mid-tier and upper tier of quartz watchmaking, let's dominate the lower tier, the entry level of quartz watches. That's when they created Swatch. Swiss watch. Swatch, that's where it comes from. In a way, Swatch kind of triggered the whole quartz crisis by creating a very cheap, very fashionable watch, meaning that a lot of other watch companies went out of business. So not only did they have the money, but then they had the opportunity to buy up all of these failing watch brands, which is quite a wild...
Yeah, those are all brands now owned by the Swatch Group. Tissot, Mido, Hamilton, Longines, Omega, Rado, and Certina. Oh, and they also own ETA, the third-party watch movement manufacturer.
Very successful business idea. Swatch is now the biggest watch group in...
Oh, and yes, they've now acquired, let's see, who else they've got? The Shoot Original, Harry Winston, Blancpain, Jacques Rose, Léon Hatteau, and Breguet.
In the world, with very prestigious brands under the name. In 1988, Grand Seiko got involved and launched their first 9F quartz movement, accurate to 10 seconds a year, with limited editions being accurate to 5 seconds a year. 10 years later, in 1998, Grand Seiko launches the first spring drive movement. However, patents for the technology were actually filed in 1978. The spring drive movement is a really interesting one because up until now, a lot of people have been using batteries, electricity to power the watch, and that's gone through battery powering a mechanical escapement, battery powering a tuning fork escapement, and then a battery powering a quartz oscillator. Grand Seiko did it a little bit differently. As the name suggests, spring drive, they use a spring to drive the movement. They use a spring that then, as it unwinds, creates electricity that then powers the quartz oscillator. So if we kind of look at cars, you've got mechanical movements being the combustion engine, you've got quartz movements being EVs. The spring drive really is the hybrid. You've got the benefit of the accuracy from the quartz oscillator, but then
that's one of my favorite spring drive Grand Seikos right there, chat. That's called the Grand Seiko Snowflake. It's hard to see from this particular angle, but if they were to put a macro lens on it, the dial is brushed in such a way that it looks like a snowfield. It looks like a field of new fallen snow. It is just absolutely gorgeous. And I think they still want, like, I don't know, $5,000, $7,500 for that particular watch. It is as much as like a used Rolex or like a brand new or gently used Omega. But oh my God, it is so, so gorgeous. It's so beautiful. I love that watch. I put it on one time when I was at a Grand Seiko event just to try it on, and I'm just like, I wish I had $5,000 because I want that watch.
Then you've got the continuous power of an automatic mechanical movement. They aren't quite as accurate as full quartz movements, but for a mechanical watch, it's accurate to 1 second a day, which is, I kind of feel that's best of both worlds. In a way.
Yes.
In a way, it's best of both worlds. Just like in the mechanical watch world, there are loads of brands selling mechanical watches, but there are very few mechanical watch makers. That's exactly the same in the quartz world. You've got even more brands than the mechanical world, and even fewer manufacturers. The main people are ETA, and then you've got Seiko and Citizen. There's other people as well, but they're kind of the main thing in our watch world. You've got some killer watches from Tag Heuer, Breitling, And Zin, especially love the Tag Heuer Accurator and Titanium. That's absolutely killer. And the Breitling Aerospace. Always love that watch, especially the retro versions. But all of these watches are powered by either ETA or Citizen Movements. So I want to focus on the guys who actually make their own watches. We're going to start with the most affordable and then get to the crazy expensive and super rare. So I feel like this watch here should get an honorable mention. Not that it's got a high performing movement. It is just good look.
Oh yes, that's the Omega Moon Swatch. So I think it's made by Swatch, and it's got a Swatch quartz movement in there, but it's got Omega design to look like the Moon Watch. The casing is plastic. Most of the parts are plastic. Not a fan of that band though. No. Also, it's fairly cheap plastic. Let me point out here. I actually remember Adrian doing a video about this a while back. One of his pushers broke off. It just snapped right off. So it's fairly poor quality plastic. And yet these have been bought and resold for like double, triple, quadruple the amount of what they originally bought for. You had people standing in line for these, like you would for a new iPhone. I didn't understand it then. I don't understand it now. This thing looks like an absolute shite watch. But I mean, yeah, whatever.
This isn't part of the 7, by the way. This is just an excuse to plug the straps that I sell over at barkandjack.com. This is a moon swatch, and it comes with this. Listen to that. That's not sexy. No one wants a Velcro strap. Jump over to barkandjack.com and get a proper sexy strap for your Moonswatch or any of your watches. We do 10% off now when you buy more than one strap. We know it's expensive to ship to various countries around the world, and so we try and help out. And sometimes, actually, if you get one of our leather straps, it just makes shipping free. So jump over to barkandjack.com. Improve your watch. Anyway, the first watch in this lineup has to be the Casio G-Shock. You can get these things in all shapes and sizes, and they start.
Nico Leonard frequently refers to this as God dare. God dare. God dare. That's how he says it. God dare. He's quite loud and obnoxious about it. But he's quite right that the G-Shock is fairly god tier in terms of digital quartz watches. I mean, it's brilliant. This and you know what's funny is that he's a Brit, and yeah, he says it almost like a Bostonian will say chowder. It's quite amusing, but yeah, he's got such a hard on for Casio G-Shocks, and understandably so. I mean, these were the ones that for an ad campaign they slapped one on the ice and had American hockey players slap it around like a hockey puck, just to see if it would hold up. And after a quick match using a Casio G-Shock as a hockey puck, they picked it up, and by Jove, it was still running. This is the same type that Teddy Baldassar rented a helicopter and tried to see just how high he could get in terms of altitude to drop a G-Shock before it would just break into pieces. And he got pretty damn high up in the air. I mean, it was at least a couple of 100 feet, like 100 plus feet before they started noticing. It's like, yeah, these are starting to break whenever they hit the ground. But yeah, good to know the limits of the Casio G-Shock.
Start from £99. These things are absolutely bomb-proof and accurate to 15 seconds a month. Not wildly accurate, but pretty accurate.
I mean,
next up,
enough.
We've got Citizen and their Forza Super Titanium. I'm a massive fan.
Oh, these are lovely. I like these. Honestly, given the choice between like a Tissot PRX and the chronograph version they have of that, and this, I think I'd go with the Citizen. Not only that, but you get the Eco Drive Quartz, which is just super accurate and so easy to maintain. and it's titanium too. So it's ultra light. It almost feels like you're not wearing anything on your wrist. I think the real test would be to see if it can withstand being ran over by a motorized wheelchair. I could swear somebody's done that before, and I think the G-Shock managed to survive that. It wouldn't surprise me if it survived that. Now, you're on a steamroller over the thing; it's going to get crushed. But a motorized wheelchair, I think it could probably survive that. Probably could even survive having a car run over it.
Fan of Citizen, that's where I started my watch journey, and this is an absolutely killer watch, especially in this dial color. This has their very famous Eco Drive movement inside, so it's a solar powered quartz movement, accurate to 15 seconds a month. It takes 30 hours of full sunlight to charge the battery, but it will then last for 8 months. This sexy little thing costs £499, and I think
you could probably find it on sale somewhere and get it for cheaper. I think that's just the RRP.
I think it is absolutely awesome. Next up is a watch that I've actually got myself. This is the cheapest. There's quite a few versions of this, but this is the cheapest Grand Seiko 9F quartz watch. This costs £2,100 and it's called the SBGX261. This
is actually, I think this is the one that I own, Chad. I own it in a white dial version, and mine is actually still got the classic Seiko logo on top and Grand Seiko down towards the 6 o'clock position. That's how they designed those before they split off Grand Seiko as an entity unto itself. But yeah, this is the one I've got, and I do believe that is the same measurements, about 37 millimeters width, and 100 meters of water resistance. But yeah, I think I paid roughly maybe 2,000, maybe just a little bit less for mine. So yeah. Schmoozer, welcome in, welcome in. Thank you for the hydrate redeem. Oh no, I'm all out of rum and coke. Oops. I'll hydrate later, I promise, Schmoozer. Don't worry.
Watch is wildly accurate to 10 seconds a year, and it does it by constantly monitoring the ambient temperature around the watch to then re-regulate the movement throughout the day. The battery life lasts for 3 years, and I've actually done 2 videos on these. I've had 2 of these watches throughout my time. I'll put a link in.
Another Grail watch, chat. Not this particular one, but they have one that's very similar to the other one we saw back here. It's a GMT quartz. It's champagne dial rather than black, and it's got blue hands. And I think it's also got a blue GMT hand. And so it's able to tell local time, but it's also got that 24-hour marker that goes around the dial like that. Oh, it is beautiful. I want one so badly. Rum and Coke, wow. I want some too. Not only my sweet strawberry lime. Yeah, I'm probably going to go get a refill here soon enough, but actually I might get I might make myself a mojito. I've still got the mix for it.
I've actually done 2 videos on these. I've had 2 of these watches throughout my time. I'll put a link in the description down below.
Love that.
Absolutely killer watches. And the movement inside is remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. Next up, we've got another Citizen. This is called the Citizen. This is another titanium.
Citizen. I remember when you could only get these through Seiya Japan if you were ordering from, if you're ordering in North America, because Citizen themselves did not sell them on their website or in any of their authorized dealers. This is their response to Grand Seiko. You can tell also with the price. Just super accurate quartz movement. It's got the Eco Drive thing, so the entire dial here is one giant solar panel, and then they put a layer of washi rice paper in different styles on top of the solar panel. It's a very Japanese sort of thing, and also got the Citizen bird here, Phoenix or falcon or whatever that is, and yeah, it's a distinctly Japanese design with the washi paper. And oh, they're brilliant watches. Very expensive, more expensive than the Grand Seiko, but they're absolutely brilliant watches.
Watch, and it seems like a lot of quartz watches are done in titanium, which I don't understand why a lot of brands do this. It's accurate to 5 seconds a year, and again, this has an eco drive movement, but this is one of their fancy eco drive movements. This costs £3,595, and it's got platinum flakes on the dial. Next up, we have Omega, and this is the first of two
explains the
Swiss
price.
quartz watches. This is the Speedmaster X33 Mars Timer, and this is I'd love to do a proper video on this because this is really quite an interesting
one, isn't
watch. Costs $6,600. Again, this is in titanium, but this was developed, tested, and is now certified by the European Space Agency and is accurate to 2 seconds a month. It has the ability to display time on Mars, which days are 2.7% longer than on Earth, which is pretty cool. Weird, but cool. Now, I wasn't sure whether to include this next one because it is the hybrid movement. It's not true quartz. It's mechanical and quartz, and a perfect combination of the two. But this is one of my favorite spring drive movements from Grand Seiko. This is called the White Birch, the SLGA009.
Oh, yes,
costs
the White Birch.
£8,500. There are cheaper versions of the spring drive movement, but this one I just particularly like. Again, because it's a hybrid movement, it's not as accurate as typical quartz watches. This is accurate to 10 seconds a month, but it has 5 days of power reserve, which I think is pretty cool for something that generates electricity. It's awesome.
That's incredible. 5 days of power reserve. Most mechanical watches will stop working after, like, I don't know, 36 hours. That's like your bottom rung type of, like, Seiko NH34 type movements that are not really regulated or anything like that. I've got, I think my Christopher Ward has a Solita GMT movement in it, and that gives me about 50 hours of power reserve on that one. That's a short life, yeah. I mean, it's meant to be kind of like your one and only watch. Failing that, you go out and get some watch winders that kind of keep your watch rotating around so that it keeps moving that rotor in the back about, and that'll keep your watch going. Let's see, I'm trying to think. And then where'd it go? Where'd the one go? Oh, here it is. And then I've got a Seiko here, my SPDC 101. It's the 62 mass reimagining. That this one in particular, I think, has got close to like a 60 or 70 hour power reserve, so it will last through. Put it down on a Friday, and it should still be moving by Sunday night, or by early Monday morning. It'll still be sweet. The second hand will still be sweeping away. Yeah, so that's just in mechanical watches. But 5 days on a spring drive, that is incredible. You can put it down for most of the week and just make that your weekend watch, and it'll still be ready for you by the time Friday afternoon, Friday evening rolls round. That is incredible. There's a Swatch Group watches that have like an 80-hour power reserve done with a silicone hairspring in their automatic movements. Still, 5 days. No one comes close. Laziest watch only works on the weekends, lol. Yeah, that's your weekender. That's your weekender. Although it looks good enough that you could make this your everyday watch. You really could. And I do love this sort of birchwood style pattern on the dial. That is lovely.
Also absolutely stunning. The next watch I think is the most interesting. This is the FP Journe Elegance. This is a remarkable watch. It looks weirdly futuristic, but also it's got that FP Journe, very traditional styling, certainly with the typography, with the design of the numerals. But the movement side is insane, absolutely insane. It's not massively accurate. It's accurate to 15 seconds a month, which I kind of feel like it's £10,000. And that's retail price, £10,000 retail.
Dear
On the grey
God.
market, you're looking around £40,000 for one of these.
Jesus. 10 to 40,000 quid? For that, and it's only accurate to 15 seconds a month, when we've just seen Citizens and Grand Seikos that are accurate to within 5 or 10 seconds per year. Yeah, no es bueno. That is very much no es bueno. That is no good. FP Journe, you're better than this. Do better.
They're really, really hard to get. But it's not the accuracy, which is a mind-blowing part of it. It's the power reserve side of this thing. If you leave this watch for 35 minutes, it knows it's been left. It's just still. It goes into sleep mode where the hands stop moving. All the mechanics stop moving. Our microprocessor still records the time, though. It can stay in this state for up to 18 years, and it still knows the time.
Good
as soon as
God,
you pick up the watch,
years.
it knows you've moved the watch. It's got sensors inside. You can see the sensor on the front. It then springs into action. The hands move around to where they should be to display the time. And they don't just move in any direction. They take the shortest route. So they'll go either anti-clockwise or clockwise. Really quite clever. 18 years is remarkable. But even on normal use, if you're actually just wearing the watch every day, it will still last between 8 to 10 years. So although it's not wildly accurate, the use of power is absolutely mind-blowing.
Okay,
And
FP
this
Journe,
is
you have
a true
redeemed yourself.
in-house movement. FP Journe makes this movement. Quite amazing. Guys, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of quartz watches. If you've just completely shunned them and you just have no interest of them, or maybe you've come across quartz watches that changed your mind. I feel it's just a different mindset. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you like the style of this video, hit the subscribe button down there and that little bell icon to get notifications when I drop a new video. If you want to check out watch straps and watch accessories, jump over to barkandjack.com. And don't forget, you get 10% off when you buy more than one strap, and that can absolutely cover your shipping costs. If not, just reduce it massively. If you're on Instagram, give me a follow at barkandjack. And if you're on TikTok, give me a follow there as well. That's it. I'll see you guys soon. Take care.
Cheers. All right, yeah. Earned yourself a subscribe and also a like. Yeah. So this is good. I like it. Yeah, I still think I'd opt for the Grand Seiko or the Citizen. So yeah. When exploring Tokyo goes wrong. Grand Seiko for sure, easily, yeah. I mean, I like that Citizen, but it's price point wise, I think you get it's odd to be saying this, but you get savings. You save money with Grand Seiko, and as lovely as the Citizen is, there's just an elegance to Seikos that the Citizen doesn't have. So yeah. Let's see. Do we want to look at more watches? I don't think I have any more watch videos except for this one about the Christopher Ward C60 Trident. Let's see, does the perfect diver exist? Christopher Ward's C60 Trident Pro 300.
It seems like everyone is always in pursuit of the perfect watch. But I personally don't believe the perfect watch exists.
No,
it's
it doesn't.
not the perfect watch for everyone. And again, with divers, everyone wants the perfect diver. Yet, nothing's perfect. But I gotta say, as divers go, this comes pretty close. And for those of you who recognize it, that's probably not a surprise. This one's been out for a little bit and everyone pretty much loves it. It's the Christopher Ward C60 Trident Pro 300. And this particular one, with its clean, crispy white dial, was lent in by a viewer. So a big thank you goes out to Larry for lending this in. Now, since a lot of people are already pretty familiar with this one, we're not going to do the standard review, but we're more going to focus on the pros and cons, with 5 reasons to buy and 5 reasons not to. And I'll warn you right now, with this one, there's not a lot to complain about, so some of these may get a bit nitpicky. But I set out to give you 5 reasons why you shouldn't get it, and I'm going to give you 5 reasons. That said, the first reason to buy this one is simply that it's practically the perfect tool watch. This design here is on point, where you have a large, easy-to-read dial with just a splash of colors to make things interesting. Yet the emphasis is still on the hands and the indices, which have just enough depth and texture thanks to the brushed finish on the hands to easily stand out, despite the white loom filling them in. And the design as a whole comes across as something beautifully crisp and clean. This is then paired with a fantastic case, one that is a tool watch, there's no mistake about it. Yet thanks to the curvy sides and the polished chamfers, they call this one a light catcher for a reason. And with that, there's just enough hint of flash to keep things interesting. And perhaps that's what I love most about this one. Just how subtle a watch it is, yet at the same time, the indices in that light catcher case do just that. Catch the light, and just enough to bring your focus to the beautiful simplicity of the design. I think when Christopher Ward went to design this one, they really went in trying to create an ideal, straightforward modern diver. And I think that's exactly what they did.
They have succeeded.
It's a watch that feels familiar, yet it's one that would never be considered an homage, which is saying something in today's watch world. Now, for reason number 1 not to buy it, and remember I said I was going to get a little bit nitpicky here, is that the design isn't perfect. It's close, but there are a few things here. Like the crown. Visually, I think it looks a little large in proportion to the case.
Okay,
it
that is
out
nitpicking.
Just a little too much. But, the flip side to that is that it is pretty easy to get a hold of and use. And there does have to be some sort of balance between form and function in the design.
Does it work? Yes. Will it survive being thrown into the Mariana Trench? Maybe. Nah, probably will.
Fine. And another nitpick here is going to be with the bracelet, that it has male end links and not female, which is becoming more common and, in my opinion, far more comfortable, as it brings down the effective lug-to-lug and makes the watch more accessible to more people. However, with this particular watch, the 40mm version, lug-to-lug is just under 48mm, and on my 7¼ inch wrist, I gotta say, it's just about the ideal size. So while I am being a bit nitpicky, in reality, I can't really complain too much. And speaking of the size, this leads to pro number 2. As Christopher Ward gives you plenty of choices, in that this is the 40mm version, but they also offer this in 38 and 42, as well as 4 different colorways and a choice between 2 different straps and...
Honestly, I like the black and white. That one to me just seems to suit it so well. These are nice. The black, the navy blue, the green even, that's not bad. Even this light blue here, this sort of sky blue color. Can't see myself really wearing this one all that often, but if I'm feeling a bit of a funky mood, I would probably consider sporting a green version. But the blue and the black are just go-tos. But that black and white one, that one is brilliant. Green for St. Patty's Day, yeah.
2 very different bracelets. So regardless of wrist size, there should be something here for everyone. Well, almost everyone. Because if you're someone that may like watches that are a little different, a little unusual like this, Christopher Ward just won't do.
The black and white one, peak. Yeah, sort of like this black and white Seiko Willard. Is that a Willard or is that a turtle? I think it's a Willard. I don't know. That also looks good. That also looks peak. I'd probably wear that.
which sometimes happens when you have a lot of watches already you've been collecting for a while. Because at that point, you already have your basic bases covered, and you kind of want something that stands out in your collection. A good way to look at the Christopher Ward Pro 300 is that it's kind of the iMac of the watch world. That if you're looking for an idealized watch, this is pretty much perfect for what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, for a lot of people, this is what an ideal modern tool watch should be. And in that way, it's great for most people. But for those that want something that stands out, something different, those that like to take the path less traveled, they might consider this a little bit boring. For instance, let's say you want something with a little bit more flash. Well, Wise Timepiece offers a completely polished 904L case that might be better for you. Or let's say you want something with a little bit more of a vibrant dial or adventuring, at which point you might want to wait for the next Zelos release. Or if you want something completely different, Seiko's special edition dials are just that. And this watch right here, which is what I was holding, is a great example of that. This is my Seiko Glacier Marine Master Reduced, which these days I think you can find for just about the same price. And I gotta say, as much as I love this watch, the Trident is far superior in almost every way.
That said, I do love the Marine Master. That is an excellent Cities of Dive watch. Sorry about that, Chan. Yeah, no, the Marine Master is an excellent series of dive watch from Seiko. Well, this one, yeah, no, this one's damn good. Honestly, there's a nice set of watches. They really are. They're expensive, but they're worth every penny. And Christopher Ward's quite transparent on their pricing. Cost times 3. That's how much they charge for their watches. The cost, multiply that times 3. That's where they get their profit. I like that level of transparency.
And I'd recommend it 9 times out of 10 to other people. Yet between the two, for me personally, I'd pick the Seiko. I just love this Glacier dial. There's nothing else like it. Now, one of the big reasons I say I'd recommend this watch isn't just because it's a fantastic design, but that it's almost perfectly executed as well. The overall design here may not have a ton of flash, but break out the macro lens, and that's really where this watch starts to impress. From these shots, you can see that all the hands and the indices have a good depth with well-defined angles and edges. Everything comes across crisp and clean. And remember, this is a white dial, which tends to show more imperfections. So for what Christopher Ward is trying to do, the fit and finish here is practically perfect. And honestly impressive for the price. Which is even more obvious when you compare it to other watches in this price range. It easily has a better execution. Now, if you're comparing this to something a bit higher end, that's maybe where this is going to fall a little bit short.
Wow.
Like, let's say I compare this to my Oris. I would see that the level of execution would be close, but the designs of the hands and the indices are less sophisticated on the Christopher Ward, meaning they're easier to do, which is perhaps where those higher end watches are going to pull ahead. But for the price, I mean, Christopher Ward is just hard to beat. And if you're someone that has no interest in luxury watches, you know, a good Christopher Ward could easily be your endgame watch for your collection. The last watch you ever buy, and you'd be perfectly happy with it. Now, let's go back to the dial and take a closer look at the very top. Right here at the logo, because this is really the third reason not to get it. The branding on Christopher Ward has always been a bit controversial, a bit problematic. Like in the past, it was just their name, which
in other words, people
did
don't
the
like
dial
it.
real estate. And for many, myself included, the name on the dial was just a huge turnoff. Yes, it does sound a little bit petty, but remember, us watch folks can be a bit picky. Now, eventually Christopher Ward did change the logo to this, which is a huge improvement. And this is
That is it's a dual flag logo, chat. This is the flag of England and the flag of Switzerland. Flag of England on the left, Swiss flag on the right, because the watches themselves are designed in England, but then they are manufactured and assembled in Switzerland.
It's supposed to represent the flag of England next to the flag of Switzerland, showcasing what the brand is really about, kind of a bridge between the two cultures, or maybe showcasing the best of both. But the thing is, if you didn't really know that and you first saw this, it kind of looks like a goofy QR code that you almost want to take out your phone and hold it up to see if you get a URL. And because of that,
come on.
Some people just can't stand this new logo. Like I said, us watch folks are picky, and if you're one of those, it just...
Anybody who has an issue with the Christopher Ward logo, they are either suffering from extreme anal retentiveness or the most bizarre form of autism. I'm sorry. Yeah, facts. Yeah, if you're that troubled by the English and Swiss flag together like that, hashtag first world problems. I mean, really. I was wondering about the symbol, lol. Yeah, no, that's what it represents. And, fun fact, for a long time, they had that logo just sitting on the shelf, ready to go. They had one of their solicitors tell them, no, you cannot use that logo. You will get sued by the Swatch Group because it looks too similar to the Swatch logo. And after a while, they just said, you know what? Fuck it, we ball. We're gonna use the logo. And they did. And guess what didn't happen? Swatch Group suing them. Swatch Group has no issue with it whatsoever.
Just is what it is. For pro number 4, this one is a spec monster. Meaning it's got everything you could want in a great everyday diver. Now I'll throw the dimensions up at the side, and you'll see that it hits the sweet spot in terms of size, weight, and thickness. But on top of that, we're talking sapphire, ceramic, screwed down crown, 300 meters of water resistance, custom rotor, cool looking case back. There are solid quick release end links, and ones that just work, I might add. As I've seen some quick release end links in the past that are a pain to get off, where you have to break out a tool just to help. But these that Christopher Ward put out are perfect. There's also a milled clasp with a great quick adjust, making it even more comfortable to wear. And there's really only one thing that I think is missing, and that's a scratch-resistant coating. But, with this design that's mostly brushed, it is less critical than some of the more dressier divers. Although, one thing it's not missing is great lume. Which you would almost expect on a diver at this price, but that's something I found not always to be true. As some of the nicer divers I've looked at seem to be more focused on the design and the finish, to the point that lume really is an afterthought. Or even more on some of the more recent Seikos, like the Marine Master Reduced and the Slim Turtles. Seiko's really slipped when it comes to lume. Those have worse lume than their entry-level divers.
That is really sad.
So great lume isn't always the case with more pricier divers. But it is for Christopher Ward. It's got great lume that's nice and bright, and should last mostly through the night. Now, for con number 4, we're going to look way down here at the bottom of the dial. See that? Swiss made. And oftentimes, that's a positive thing to see. But you really got to remember what Swiss made means, which is simply 60% of the value has to come from Swiss sources. And that doesn't mean parts value, that means total value. And oftentimes, that means these are really just Swiss assembled. And that's true with most Swiss watches in this price range. With them, most of the parts are still manufactured in China, just like almost every other watch that's not a luxury watch.
I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
While a lot of people do take comfort when they see Swiss made and sometimes even brag about it, honestly, it doesn't mean that much, and it doesn't necessarily mean that
really.
it's better quality than we're getting with other brands. And this right here is also a good.
Exactly. Why is it a con? Yeah, I know. I mean, most of these parts are going to be made in factories in China because they can do these sorts of things quickly and cheaply. So they'll source, metal bits and whatnot from China, and maybe they'll complete the final assembly over in Switzerland. We don't know. I mean, he was talking about pickiness. He wasn't kidding. I know. He must have really struggled with this one to come up with some nitpicks. Though I must say he's got some good choices for alternatives here with his other divers, the Monta Ocean King and also the Hydra Timer over there. Some lovely watches, but yeah, I still love that Christopher Ward.
Time to talk about the movement. Christopher Ward is using a Sleeta SW200, a good Swiss movement.
Standard workhorse.
One a lot of people have faith in and has a pretty good track record. But, if you do compare this to, say, a cheaper Miyota 9015, the specs aren't much different. Now, I can already hear some of the comments about what I'm about to say, but
yeah, that's one of the reasons I opted for the Sealander GMT, because I think it's got I don't think it has an SW200. I think it's got an SW300, but with the regulation and with the GMT complication added in, they're able to work on it to get a 50. It's like a 50 or 56-hour power reserve with the GMT version, and yeah, 36 to 38 hours is not. It's not really a whole lot. That could be better.
There is an argument to be had that the 9015 is actually better than the Sleeta, or at the very least on par. Just because it costs more doesn't necessarily mean it's better. I'm not going to get into it too much, but let's just say there's an argument there. And this is a bit of a debate in the watch world. But the main reason I'm pointing it out here is that a lot of the Pro 300's competition will be sporting that 9015, and some of which you could potentially get for a better price.
That's
Although
very true.
It is worth pointing out that price and value aren't always the same thing. And this
Also
does
true.
lead us to our fifth reason to buy it. And that's that Christopher Ward has struck an almost ideal balance between price and the quality of their divers, offering a lot of value. Meaning that even though the price is higher than some of the other options out there, there's still a lot of value here with Christopher Ward. Just look at the specs, the fit and finish, and some of the extras, like the quick release end links and quick adjust clasp. I think there are very few brands out there that come close to what Christopher Ward is doing, with perhaps Wise watches being one of the few that may beat Christopher Ward in terms of value. Although before you go look at Wise, just know that they're more focused on flashier, dressier divers, which is very different than this. And if this is what you want,
apples and
there's
oranges.
not a lot of competition out there at this price that could rival it. However, con number 5 is also related to price, and that's that for many of us, the price is higher than you think. And I'm specifically talking to those of us in the United States. Because here, Christopher Ward is one of the biggest brands we always have to pay duty taxes on. For other parts of the world, I know you guys always get screwed, so you kind of expect it. But here in the US, we don't. We don't really pay duty taxes on something unless it's over $800. And there's a long history of people just surprised about it when they get their Christopher Ward along with a bill for duty taxes. One nice thing is that Christopher Ward now lets you pay that duty taxes up front. So it's not going to be as big a surprise as it has been in the past. But still, if you look into it, it's about another 10%. And that does add to the bottom line.
Yeah.
It hurts the value a bit for us here in the US. And as a side note, I've heard that they are opening some retail stores in the US, one of which is supposedly coming to the Dallas area. And when that opens up, hopefully that'll help you avoid that. And speaking of price, this kind of also brings up another point. Not something that's a negative against the watch, just something to kind of whine and bitch about.
I do know that they have done some pop-up shops. I don't know if they're doing permanent storefronts in the United States. For now, the most they've done is pop-up shops. And I know this because they wrote about it in their company magazine called In the Loop. Honestly, pop-up shops would save money in the long run. Maybe so. I know if they had like small enough boutiques, small little intimate boutiques, they could probably make it work and specifically target probably, high-end areas. Maybe something on like Park Avenue or Madison Avenue in New York City. Maybe something just off of, well, I don't know if anybody wants to consider doing anything in Los Angeles. But maybe somewhere in like, Uptown or near like Highland or University Park over in Dallas. Bal Harbor in Florida. Maybe the shops at Bal Harbor. Trying to think what else. Yeah, something like that. Areas such as that. Maybe something in Scottsdale, Arizona. That might also work. Maybe even a pop-up shop in Vegas on the Strip somewhere. Maybe even something like the Fordham shops at Caesar's Palace, or something at the shops at the Bellagio. Yeah, Spectrum in Irvine, or Fashion Island in Newport Beach. Yeah, something like that would work. Something like that would work. I don't know. Actually gives me an idea.
At least for those of you who've been collecting for a while. And that's when you look at Christopher Ward's prices, you notice they've gone up quite a bit in recent years.
They have.
Christopher Ward used to have the best diver under $1,000, and that was with a bracelet. And now it's just about over that. And like I said, this really isn't a negative against the watch, because this is happening across the board, but still something to complain about. Because inflation just sucks.
Yes.
Bottom line, at this point, you're probably sick of hearing me say the word perfect. But when it comes to divers, this is pretty close. The Christopher Ward Trident Pro 300 is kind of like the 3 Series of the watch world. The design as a whole may not be as interesting as some other options out there, but it's something you'll appreciate more and more every time you put it on your wrist, as it offers an ideal experience. And when you're looking down at it, you'll have a hard time thinking of anything you might be missing. So if you happen to be considering a diver in this price range, honestly, you'd be a fool not to at least consider it. Now, as usual, let me know your thoughts down below on the diver, on Christopher Ward, or just whatever you're thinking about. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, you guys know what to do. It's pretty standard these days. I'm Shane, this is Relative Time, and I'll see you next time.
Alright, that gets a like. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you never miss an update. If you have any thoughts, questions, or ideas for future videos, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. You can also follow me on Twitter @LordRexworth for more updates and behind-the-scenes content. And if you want to support the channel, check out my Ko-fi or Throne pages. Links are in the description. Finally, be sure to visit LordRexworth.com and follow me across all platforms. That's LordRexworth.com. Until next time, I wish you all the best, and God bless.